Yeah. Turn it up. Let it breathe. Talk that truth in it. Woke up Sunday, coffee black, truth on my mind, world gone sideways, can't tell wrong from right. Everybody shouting, nobody listening clear, then a voice cuts through like a bell in my ear. Said, hold up, truth ain't shaped by the crowd. Cut through the noise, don't follow it loud. Flip open pages, let the word speak first. If you build on sand, you bound to get cursed. It makes sense when the light breaks through, when the lies fall down, and you see what's true. From the mic to the soul, yeah, he keeps it tight, and they tip it. Talking truth in the night, it makes sense. Yeah, it all lines up when grace runs deep, and the truth ain't cut, no compromise, no watered down fence. Real talk, living like it makes sense. Yeah, diamond, ideas rolling, faith over fear, yeah, the truth stay golden. Culture try to twist what reality means, but Danny break it down like surgical beams. Not vibes, not trends, not whatever feels right. It's logic with a backbone, faith in the fight. Romans 14, when the people divide, he remind you who to judge, let that truth collide. See the world say blend, he say stand firm. Not hate, just truth, let the scripture confirm. No cheap grace, no pride in disguise, just Christ at the center, no compromise. Yeah, you can run from truth, but it's still gonna stand. You can build your life, but check what you plan. From the trial of Christ to the lies we defend, history speak loud if you listen again. Not here for clicks, not here for fame, just speaking that truth in the culture of games. New year, new hope, but grace stays the same. You don't start from scratch, nah, remember his name. Not hustle is holy, not chasing the grind. It's freedom and truth, yeah, we're new in your mind. It makes sense when the light breaks through, when the lies fall down, and you see what's true. From the mic to the soul, yeah, he keeps it tight, and he tip it. Talking truth in the night, it makes sense. Yeah, it all lines up when grace runs deep, and the truth ain't cut, no compromise, no watered down fence. Real talk, living like it makes sense. Yeah. Not everything true feels easy, but truth, it still makes sense.
There we go. All right. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of It Makes Sense podcast. IMSP is the short for it. I got me, Danny Tippett here, and I am the guy who tries to make sense out of life and the universe, and the only way to do that is through the Christian worldview. At least that's what I have experienced after having tried to do it many, many other ways. And you know what? We are talking about worldviews today. We've got Josh, the man, the myth, the legend, the guru, the genius, I can go on and on and on with all the accolades and the names, but Josh, my producer, is on with us. He's going to take us through the little housekeeping stuff here in just a second. And we have a guest on the show. Now, here's the thing. We're a small enough show that if you get on and you reply and you have some cool stuff to say, I'm going to say, come on the show the week after. we are no Joe Rogans here. So we got Jim Davis. And no, if that name rings a bell, and Jim knows what I'm about to say, that name rings a bell. No, this is not the creator of Garfield, but he is probably cooler. But we have Jim Davis joining us today, and he was in the chat last week and engaging with us. So glad to have you on, Jim. Thanks for joining us a week later, which is not our typical, but things coming up for my vacation and various things we got going on. So we got to do it. And so appreciate your flexibility, man. We're going to learn more about Jim here in just a second, if we could. Before we start to recap next week, Josh, man, run us through all the stuff, because you got cool swag. You got a lot of things to say. You got a lot of places to send us. Tell us all about it.
Well, of course, It Makes Sense podcast is just one of many shows on Revolver Broadcasting. What is Revolver Broadcasting, you might ask? Well, it's an entire network of shows for your entertainment, for your education, for your news, for your pure joy. So if you haven't already, do follow or subscribe depending upon the platform you're viewing or listening on, but also make sure and visit our website, revolverbroadcasting.com. The website again is revolverbroadcasting.com. And when you do, notice I didn't say if, I said when, because we know you're going to. Well, it'll look like this. And you can scroll down on that website and check out the faces to the names of the shows, maybe even this one here, It Makes Sense podcast. Click on that Listen Here tab, and every episode ever should show up. Yeah, look at that. Even the current one live directly from the website. And so I'm trying to read Steve's. Yeah, does it? Yeah, we're talking about the view here. Anyway, let's see here. You can also hover over where it says podcast there at the top of the web page, and you can see all the shows there in one place. Maybe you like the show The Hangout. Of course, Jim was on that. You're maybe more familiar with him with the name Darmac, where he told his story, and man, it was so fantastic to have him on The Hangout. And if you guys haven't seen that episode, you need to go back and check it out. As a matter of fact, I mean, I have not had a bad guest yet. I mean, everybody has been so cool. I mean, I've even had folks on that I would not say that we have the same worldview at all, and still been just absolutely fantastic. And so go back and check out all those if you haven't seen them already. Of course, we have the news chambers next to where it says podcast at the top. And you can see our daily devotionals written by mostly by this guy next to me, Danny Tippett.
I can't write enough, man. I got some in the gun. I got some in the chamber right now too. So
it's awesome. So we want to encourage you guys, if you haven't already been doing that, I know Steve has, go over there and not only read those, and they're going to make you think, they're going to deepen your faith for sure, but leave the comments. Leave the comments, because that'll help improve. And I know Danny would agree that just like everybody at Revolver, we're always trying to improve. We want to get better for you. So let us know if you love it, what you hate, what you'd really like to see, all the things. And of course, there's also the news stories and assertions there. I'm working on some more news story, like setup things where we have something more like a daily article, at least one daily article. So that is in the hopper. But what we want to encourage you the absolute most is to go to the prayer list. We have a lot of folks on the prayer list, and they need your prayer by name. That's why they're on this list. And if you need to be added to that prayer list, or maybe taken off the prayer list, whether you have a praise report or a prayer request, fill out the email form at the bottom, any part of our webpage, and we'll get you taken care of. And I want to point out that recently we had a young lady named Libby. She's right there at the top. She had went missing for a few days, and she is back home.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, and so praise the Lord for that. But the home life, from what I've heard, is not so fantastic, and that was what caused the run in the first place. So if we could continue to pray definitely for Libby and all the people on our prayer list, for that home life to improve, and any hearts that are stone in that home to turn to flesh and come to the Lord. And last but not least, of course, is the shop, where you can shop like a hot shot. And pick up that fancy hat that Danny Tippett's got on.
Man, let me tell you the looks I get. Some not so good. Some are so appreciative.
It's a big Bible study grade. It also comes in black and gold, like I have. And also he is wearing the I believe in the Alan Squatch's Real t-shirt. If you guys haven't picked up one of those, you definitely need to do that. You'll find all those things in our shop and more. So you can either hit on the explore our collection, and you'll be able to see everything all in one place. You can just kind of scroll through all of it, or while you're at the home there, you got these different tabs, which each one of these are a collection. Our latest being the America 250 collection, and we definitely want to encourage you to guys go over there and get you one of those. I believe Darmac just ordered one recently. This one right here, actually, the Wings Like Eagles. So it'd be so fantastic to see you guys go in there. My favorite being out of these is this America 250 with the nice,
pretty sweet
car. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet right there. Yeah.
John corrected me. He says that it looks more like a Ford. I'm like, well, can it be a Chevy Ford hybrid? He goes, blasphemy. So
You can't
apparently
say that. That's
can't do that.
terrible. No, you cannot say that. No, sir. Oh, wow.
So yeah, anyhow, go over to revolverbroadcasting.com, check all those things out. Of course, if you guys haven't already, I know Steve probably already has, hit that like button, smash it. Make sure that you guys are commenting, not just in the live chat, but also in the comment section below. Every time you comment in the comment section below, we watch our viewership go up. It's a real thing, even on Rumble. I know they say they don't have an algorithm, but we've watched it in real time every single time. And I'm running out of breath here. Follow or subscribe depending upon the platform you're viewing or listening on, making sure those notification bells are turned on so you know every time Revolver Broadcasting goes live. And remember to share, because sharing is what, Jim? Oh, muted up.
I never took the mute off, but sharing is caring.
Caring. Yes, sir. Awesome. Awesome.
We don't get this today, though.
No. I mean, I could do that if you want.
That's
well, Josh.
Sorry.
Thank you no, you're good, Jim. Thank you for going through all of that, man. And so let's turn it to Mr. Jim Davis. Jim, you got on last week and you made some comments and some encouraging comments, like I was just saying before we got on here, right? It's sometimes, even when this is for our audience, when you're thinking something, I do this sometimes. We watch church online and nobody comments in the online chat. And so, but we have a online team that's constantly saying stuff and asking questions from us. And I'm like, you know what, if I have the opportunity and the ability, if I have a keyboard, I'm going to respond, because number one, it confirms to the people that are on there that are doing the work of trying to build engagement. Number two, it just, putting things out there in real time and looking to see what somebody else says. And it's just an encouragement to other people. And you were an encouragement to me last week, Jim. I appreciate you. And so we wanted to bring you on because I was honestly, I just looking at some of the stuff that you sent me. This is sort of up your alley right here. Some of the stuff we're talking about. And so I don't think it's a mistake that we're going to have you on, and maybe even for the next 2 episodes, since this is going to be since this is a 4-part series, and have you on with us doing this series. So tell us a little bit about yourself, buddy.
Yeah. So I'm Darmac, Jim Davis, and I've been on Rumble mostly. I don't do a ton of streaming, but I do some. I have a show on Red Pill Fight Club with Kang every Wednesday night. It'll be hitting at 6:00 tonight, which I guess it just hit the episode. So we tape it early. But this past episode that we did was an example. We showed the United States Constitution versus the 1936 Soviet Constitution that was pretty much written by Joseph Stalin. And what we showed is in the United States, the government derives rights from the people.
Yeah.
Whereas in Stalin's 1936 Constitution, the government gave the people its rights. And it has things like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all of these things. But obviously, it didn't protect those or allow people to use those rights. Yeah. So that was our last episode. I kind of thought that was a good one, because with the socialists winning all of these races that we have, many of them I don't think are socialists. I believe they're communists.
Yeah.
Just because of how far they want to take the means of production and all of those types of things. So that's kind of what the type of thing I've been working on recently, with all the socialists winning in these races. I also work with the Angry Conservative, do some stuff with him. For those of you that don't know Angry, he's a wonderful person. He really is. Yeah. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I mean, he is. Yes, he is a He is a God-fearing, God-loving individual, and the guy would give you the shirt off of his back if he had to. I mean, he's just that type of person. I was never a political person. I kind of, I always voted and those types of things, but I was never a political type person until all this strife came along in the country. All this, I guess I call it hatred. And it reminds me of several different places, like Russia in the 1910s. That decade. You saw some of this stuff in China, and it always follows a very similar path. And I see us kind of going along that path. Now, the beautiful thing that put me here today is because Angry Conservative introduced me to Josh, who asked me to come watch morning prayer. And Sterling and Josh made a huge impact on me and have changed my life and my relationship with the Lord. So I like to give them credit for that, especially
Amen.
publicly like this. I think that's made a huge, probably the biggest impact in my life. So thank you. But like you said, Danny, I'm a history guy. I studied history in college and high school, and I love it. I read about it. And I think I have a unique skill where I can tie what's happening now to something that happened in the past.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's awesome, man, because that is exactly it is sort of the overview of this whole entire series, but that is exactly what we're talking about today. We're going to reach back into some history when it comes to communism, socialism. We're going to talk about secularism and naturalism as well, in this whole worldview shift. But man, I just love that, and I'm curious for you, now you said when you started to sort of see this sort of hatred, and I think we're more divided in a lot of ways than we've ever been. And I think there was times in our country where we're divided on like singular issues pretty heavily, like let's say racism, right? Back in the 50s, the 60s. And then obviously you had the 1800s, the Civil War. Like racism was a very big divider. Well, we sort of started to get past that, and now it's not only racism now that we're divided on again, it's economic issues. We can bring up Marxism and various worldviews when it comes to in religion, right? There's just it's like we're more divided because it's based on more topics that we're divided on now. And I'm curious for you, when you say you started to see the hatred, like was that let's just do it by presidents? Was it Biden? Was it first Trump? Was it Obama, or before that?
No, it's Obama. It was Obama.
Okay.
I mean, Obama to me was the trigger.
Yeah.
He had 8 years. Biden took what Obama wanted to do.
Yeah.
And did it because he was in a different position.
Yeah.
But this is where we were led the whole time. I mean,
Yeah.
let's real quick example. Let's talk about healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Obama gave healthcare to everybody. Well, he didn't really give healthcare to everybody.
Right.
He made people buy it, and then if you didn't, they penalized you. But they put it in a way that it couldn't be taken out.
Right.
Right. They did that on purpose so that it would lead to
a tax rather than a penalty. Yeah. An actual. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were leading us to Medicare for all.
Yeah.
Right. Because we couldn't reverse what they had done.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to figure that out.
Trying to figure that ever since.
and you just can't do it. And the costs have exploded, and the healthcare's gotten worse, I believe. And so, but it was, I think President Obama, though he presented himself very well, I think he was a very divisive person.
Yeah. Yeah. He was great. He had all the sheen and the shininess and all the, what people like to say, the presidentialness of it. But really, I mean, that's as deep as it went when it came to being the leader of the greatest country in the free world, right? I agree with you. I sort of started to shift. Now I'm gonna ask your age. I feel like you're around my age.
Mhm.
I'm 50.
I'm 57. I'm a little
Okay.
older.
Okay. You're
Yeah.
a little older than me. So for me and Josh, you're much younger than the both of us. For me, it was probably coming in towards Bush, second Bush, in the latter part of his second term. And that was where, in probably a good portion of it because of my dad, he was frustrated about a lot of things, and I don't think the Democrat Party was quite as wild and loose and crazy as they are now back then. We can look back at various things that even Biden or Schumer or Pelosi even would say back then that they agreed with the Republican Party. But it was just something was not working for me. And I mean, 2008, I got married in 2001. So I was right there about, it was probably 9/11, I would say, is when I started to pay more attention to what's going on in our country, both religiously and politically. And that's where it did it for me. But yeah, it's been interesting to see since coming out of Bush and going through the last several presidential terms that we are divided, and it doesn't seem to be that we're politically that we're going to be getting there anytime soon to a more united country. However, and this is going to be the end of our series, the last episode, it does seem to be there's some hope religiously or in faith that we may be becoming a little bit more united. But we'll get to that in a couple of shows. So let me recap a little bit. And Jim, thanks again for sharing, man. I'm so glad to have you. And look, at any point in time, interrupt my ramblings, please.
Okay.
I have no problem with that. Now, I may say, hold on, don't go there yet, because we're going to get there here in a minute, but we're going to get there. So let me recap. All right. So what I wanted to go over last time was, number one, were we founded on Christian principles? And so I played this little interview by Katie Couric to this supposed history professor. And he made the statement. She's like, are you concerned about Christian nationalism, AKA Christianity? Let's just be honest and frank. Are you concerned about how Republicans and conservatives are looking at it? Like they want more Christian nationalism. Okay. That's how she's framing it. She wants it to sound bad. And he goes, and so I'm concerned about this. They say we were founded on Christian principles, or she even used the term Christian nation, which I can say is, you can debate that a little bit more. I think we were founded as a Christian nation, definitely, but I can see where somebody want to debate and argue that. But he doesn't use that term. He actually says in any sense were we founded on Christian principles. And so we started off immediately showing this letter between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. And Adams just, I still laugh. And again, I don't take credit for this. This is, we were talking about a guy named Tim Barton, wrote a book that he's got several of these books that have come out, and they were talking about this from his book on the Live Free Nation podcast. And so I can't take credit for it. I was as blown away when I heard that as I was when I was saying it on my own show. And Adams says explicitly to Thomas Jefferson, likely a deist, we were founded on Christian principles, and he even uses a rhetorical question. What Christian principles are those? Christian principles, verbatim. Those were his words. And then Thomas Jefferson agrees as much in a follow-up letter to him. So we went through all sorts of different documents and letters and state constitutions, just sort of pointing out over and over and over again, there is no way that you can shake it. And it was a country founded on Christian principles, right? And then we talked a little bit about if they're coming here to start a country on Christian principles, then what are they running from? And so we talked a little bit about the UK, or at that time, Britain, England, and the British Crown and the Church of England, and just sort of like, this is not what they wanted. They didn't want to have a theocracy per se. They didn't want politics, government, and church to be oversight. They wanted them to be separate spheres, as the Bible points out to us, these various spheres of family, church, and state. that they're accountable to God. They're not accountable to each other. There no way is the family or the church accountable to the state, right? And so being in a very, very faith-based Christian nation, okay, even the deists agreed with the Christian principles in theory. Like, yes, I may not believe in Jesus as the divine God or in maybe his miracles or how that worked out, but I do believe that the ethics of Christianity must be what we have to form our government and to execute our government. That's clear, right? No arguments there, except from those who don't want to believe that God was the founder of our country. So today, we're going to talk about, and what I'm interested in is the philosophy or maybe in the psychology of it. We were here, and we're not that old of a country, right? We're one of the youngest nations in the world that has the most unique government in the world, and it is the American experiment, right? And we were here so strong and so heavily invested in the Bible and prayer, even to praying in the House and the Senate, and the president's praying, and Bible in schools, and it's mandatory. Like, we have to have the Bible in our education system. We need to read it. We need to learn.
Uh-oh. We lost you, Danny. He's probably still talking too.
Yeah, he probably doesn't know yet, but
I'm gonna text him.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
He just finished talking about Bible in school. He's on a good roll, man. Good roll.
That's good. Yeah.
Well, I guess until he pops back
Yeah.
up. Yeah, I think I can mention real quick what got me started with politics, and it goes back to my high school days. I wrote an article. Actually, I won awards in my school newspaper in high school. I still have the old newspaper upstairs. On 9/11. So it was Bush 43 that woke me up to politics, and then I started immediately asking questions. And when I started asking the questions with that, and then it just made me start taking a look at everything. Like, what are these guys saying? And then I started, I found myself some years later hearing the term conspiracy theorist, and I was like, but I'm just trying to figure it out.
Right.
Like, where is the money going?
Stuff doesn't make sense. Why is this? Why did this happen? Why does that?
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, it would be better if they would just tell us what happened rather than let us all speculate. And it's a little bit crazy. But I just remember, like, listening to things like the woman, I forgot what her name is now, but I think she's a tenured professor at the University of, I think, North Carolina, that wrote the 1619 Project. I mean, the founding of the country of America was in 1776. She claims it was 1619, which was the date that the first slaves came over, and that the country started and was built upon slavery. And it's just like, no, it wasn't. And oh, by the way, there are a bunch of, we called them indentured servants that came from the UK and other European countries.
Yeah, the Irish were definitely
right
first in line for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're going to, it's picking and choosing. It's Marxists hate history.
Mm-hmm.
They want history to begin the day that they take power, so that you can't say, well, precedent says, or that never happened. They don't want that. Oh, good.
That's why they have to wipe it clean, right?
That's why they have to wipe it clean, because they don't want to have to explain it, and they want to be able to say whatever they want to say. Like, Danny was saying that professor that said that we weren't founded on Christian principles. So they want to wipe history.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Danny, can you see us and hear us? It looks like you maybe froze. Yeah, it popped back because he said he had a quick power outage. So he may have to pop up again.
No worries.
Yeah, that was something that like that was my wake up moment was because everybody was angry and I felt that too, like, but then it was an English teacher of mine, and I won't say his name here, even though it's been I mean years ago,
right.
But he was like, hey, you said you want to be a journalist, take your emotion out of it and take a look at what's really happening. And so that started getting me asking questions, and that allowed for more music. Cheers. Can you hear us, see us, Danny?
Yeah. And
Awesome.
I guess I did jump back on to, so my power went out.
Oh,
yeah, Josh, man, we can't do a show without something crazy happening.
Oh, all
right.
That's the old devil, man. Where you had left off, you just started talking about Bible in schools, and it was required Bible in schools. That's
So long story short, we were in a country steeped in the Bible and rooted in the Bible, and all of our founding fathers, right? They were like, you know what? We can't do this without God. It was plain and clear for everybody from Benjamin Franklin to Thomas Jefferson to George Washington to John Adams and so on and so forth, Patrick Henry, all the guys. Okay. So let's, again, my interest in doing this whole series, and it's sort of what you were saying, Jim, is looking back in history, and can we see markers and instances in history of things that are happening that we can see leading to where we're at maybe now as a country. I think because we are such a unique setup, we're such a unique country in how we're set up, not just in government, but in our culture, in our approach to life, and how we just want to live, live actually free, and actually have things like freedom of religion, and actually have things like freedom of speech, and not be controlled by the government on that. I think it takes a little bit longer. And UK is much older a country than we are, but they may have started this slide years ago. Maybe it was with the Church of England when, 1700s, when it was the power to be government and religiously. And so we're seeing every time the humans get a hold of something, right, we corrupt it. The thing is the difference in understanding of why it's corrupted. And we're going to talk about that. So I want to dive into what is generally seen as a worldview shift. And I want to make a couple of, and you guys, pipe in on this whenever you want. I want to make a couple of claims that we have to acknowledge in order to move on, because I think some people I don't think some people even know what their worldview is, let alone do they even have a worldview, or even what the word worldview means. Simply put, it's how you view the world, yes, but what dictates that, So when we talk about our individual selves, right, we're all Christians here on this show, and as being Christians, hopefully we see the world through a Christian worldview. And that Christian worldview would be a biblical worldview. So how we define, how do we identify, how do we look at things? Well, we use the Bible as that lens. Whereas somebody who doesn't read the Bible, and this goes for people who call themselves Christians, they claim a Christian faith, but they don't live by a Christian worldview. And I think part of that is maybe not intentional. I think it's a lack of discipleship and understanding. And what does it mean to say yes to Jesus? It means more than just saying yes to Jesus, right? But then there are people intentionally, right? They intentionally know that I do not want to believe in the word, in the Bible or God. So maybe they are a Muslim, maybe they are Jewish, maybe they are Mormon, maybe they're an atheist or an agnostic. They look at the world and they're going to make their choices in accordance to what the world gives them based on their faith belief. I won't say lack thereof, because I don't think anybody lacks any kind of faith or any kind of belief. We all believe or have faith in something. So as a country, though, we've done that as well. As an entire nation, we have done this as well. So a couple of things to acknowledge, first of all. America's current condition is the fruit of competing worldviews. And agree or don't agree, are we one of the greatest melting pots of worldviews ever known?
I would say yes. We've got cultures from all over the world here.
Yeah. Do you think that we have encountered faiths and religions that, to some degree, maybe those in the Bible have never encountered? And the reason why I ask that question is because I see mostly polytheistic, either monotheistic or polytheistic faiths. I don't ever see atheism in the Bible.
I don't either.
Josh?
That I recall.
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I'd say to that first question, yes, yes, we are, but up until recently, and we're definitely going to get, I'd say, more into that in that last episode, specifically because there's a worldview that there's a few worldviews actually that just refuses to melt.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 Like you mean refuses to
assimilate.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was thinking.
You're welcome to your faith.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But there's a part of this thing. I mean, when you're coming to this country, we have a culture. It's set. It's all but in stone, and we all kind of, red, white, and blue, baby.
Yeah.
and
everybody should be that way, even if you're a Muslim or whatever. I'm sorry, I've got a gnat in here; it's bugging me. Yes, I think there is, and I think we can point out Islam as being one of the ones that is having the heart, especially I would say Islamic conservatives. I'll use that word because I think we're a large I think when Islam came to this country, you had like what's his name? Not Professor X, Malcolm X. That version of Islam was an Americanized version, I think, of Islam. And I think we have quite a bit of that. I mean, people converting to Islam and maybe changing their names, but not really practicing the Quran, bit by bit, but we have those that have come over here from the other countries that are more Islamic conservatives, and they are more geared towards things where when they read the Quran, they read Sharia law, and they think Sharia law should be a law of the land, or at least in their area of Dearborn, Michigan, or places like that, right? That's not compatible with our country. It's not compatible with our Constitution, our federal, state, and local governments and laws. It's just not compatible. And I agree with you, Josh. There's a lack of willingness to want to assimilate, and we're seeing a lot of protests in the streets of major cities as a result of that.
And all these pop-up homogenous neighborhoods too. I can say this, driving around a bit, the other job that I do, picking up people and dropping them off. You find that you start going into neighborhoods. It's like you start looking around going, well, nobody here is any, like everybody is completely homogenous in this one neighborhood.
Right.
And I mean, there's just nothing, and it's like, it's made that way. It's like, it's purposefully
right.
done that way specifically. You can tell like the entire housing additions have went up just to cater to a specific race or
community, faith. Yeah.
I've seen it time and time again. And even it's starting to be like everywhere here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. My county is the number one county for people from India moving into the United States right now.
Yeah.
And it's that way on purpose, and they do not assimilate. They expect us that are American citizens. Most of them are not. Most of them, I think, are visa or green card holders. And they expect us to conform to them. They expect not that you don't respect where they came from or what they're from, but they treat us American citizens like we're the lowest on the caste system.
Yeah,
like they were back in India.
Yeah,
so it's difficult.
Yeah. And I don't have issue with places like Chinatown. or Little Italy, or an Irish neighborhood, or I don't have problems with a neighborhood primarily that's Sikh Indians. I don't have a problem with a neighborhood mostly majority Pakistanis or Somalis. I do have a problem when they are, if we want to bring up Somalis, abusing our welfare system. If they're not coming here to contribute to our society, but sucking off the teat of our society and taking from us, and then at the same time complaining about it. I think there needs to be a stricter understanding of our immigration laws, and also put in place to say, hey, you come here, you are free to practice your religion, your speech, and so on and so forth. And you have that freedom to disagree with your government and your country and so on and so forth. But when you're not contributing to our society, when you're not trying to help not just yourself flourish, but others flourish around you. And we're going to get into some of that idea of what biblical Christianity brings in thought with it when it comes to our neighbors and things like that. But
real quickly, also they came here for a reason,
mm-hmm.
And we don't need here to turn out like there. That's why
Exactly.
you came here to get
Exactly.
away. So
yeah. I mean, you don't want to come from a third world country and try to create another third world country. But see, that's the problem with that assimilation side of things. It's the worldview, right? It's their worldview of not understanding and saying this is how it was there. You know what I love about Cubans? They flee that country. They don't want what that country had, but they have pride in their Cuban heritage, right? I have no problem with you having a Cuban flag in your car. I don't have a problem with you, eating your food, singing your songs, celebrating, worshiping, however it was that you did that in Cuba. But they appreciate the fact that they are in a country that is built on principles of freedom first, not equality. And they appreciate that they're not where they're at anymore. And I think there's a lot of immigrants that appreciate that too. I'm not saying, but we are seeing more of a attitude coming into this country where, I can just make it like my old country, but just here and also enjoy the benefits that come with it. That's just not how that works, right?
Well,
So, yeah, go ahead,
if
Jim.
I may, I think there's two different types of folks that are coming in as immigrants now, or however, I mean, illegally, legally, whatever. But we used to have everybody, like we were talking about, coming to assimilate. I think a lot of the folks are coming here to make money for a period of time and then go back.
Yeah.
So they don't want this to be their long-term country. And then I think you have another group of people that are like, wow, this is the richest country in the world. Certainly they can afford to take care of me for a few years, and kind of the same thing. So, that doesn't lead to the type of cohesion that we need with folks that are coming in, if that makes sense.
A net positive.
I even think that there's a third group. There is a group that want to come here and they see the money that can be made, but they see it as in enriching their families and being able to live freely under a system that back home did not allow them to do that, And so I think there are those that are like, you know what, and they will stand up for. A lot of them end up on the conservative side. I mean, let's look at the immigration issue with, all the Mexicans that come to this country. You look at a lot of the Mexicans that are already here and came here legally are against illegal immigration because they did the hard work. They understand what they were coming from and where they're at, and they want to see that continue. They know what bad things are happening in their country. As being in the Border Patrol, like you said, Jim, there was a lot of illegal immigrants that were not here to do anything but benefit themselves and take it back home. Because we tend to think, as great as this country is, yes, it is great. We can't compete with generations of culture and heritage. And unfortunately, some of those places have very, totalitarian or authoritarian governments. And so they ruin those people's opportunities to really enjoy their culture and their heritage. And so they want to hold on to that, and they don't want to really leave. That's all they've ever known. Like, a lot of them get here. America's great, but a lot of them illegally come. They want to actually go back home because as great as this country is, and as prideful we are about this country, we do get a big head on ourselves. Like, who wouldn't want to live here? It's hard for us to understand why somebody that lives in a city in Mexico that's poor, why they would want to go back there. We went to the Dominican on mission trips. Man, those people were much happier in some of the shanties they lived in than I've seen, people living in $500 million homes here in America. And they don't want to leave. And you know what? They're happy with the money that they're making. They're doing what they're doing. They're happy and they have joy. And so be it. I can't fault them for that. So I think you're right. People want to come, make a name, make money, go back. Fine. People want to come. They want to change our country fundamentally, whether intentionally or not intentionally. It's built into their DNA to continue doing what they're doing and live under what they're living under. It's like the Israelites leaving Egypt and then crying immediately when they cross the Red Sea to want to go back. It's like it's just put in them. And then there's people here that are like, I do want a better life for myself and my family. And I see something in America and I love that. And I appreciate that. We'll go in the military and fight for that even, in that regard. Joshua, were you going to say something?
No, I'm just listening to you.
So we're going to jump into politics then. And we have to make some acknowledgments about this. So you cannot really, we can't really understand politics. And a lot of people think they do unless we understand beliefs behind those politics. And so a lot of people, secularists, we're going to get into this here in a minute. Madeline O'Hare, she made the comment like, you know what, we need to remove the Bible and God out of schools because it'll make the schools neutral. And that term neutrality is thrown around all the time. There's no such thing as a neutral worldview. And there's very little ideologies or worldviews or understandings or faiths or religions that I can even think of one that is actually genuinely neutral. It's either on or it's off, right? And so we have to understand a few things. Number one, every political position begins with a worldview. So whether you're a Christian, looking at politics and wanting to see Christian principles in our policies, or you're an atheist and you don't want prayer in schools, Bible in schools, certain things to be, you want transgender kids to be able to use the bathroom that's not of their, biological sex, so on and so forth. That's every political position starts with that. Laws don't appear out of thin air either. We can see Title IX is a perfect example of this, right? We want to protect the rights of women, but now Biden comes in and says, you know what? A man can be a woman. I mean, it's astonishing that kind of that people are trying to place that reality on us. That is not one at all. But that's just what that is, right? Title IX is a perfect understanding of this is Title IX. We birthed this out of this understanding of respecting women, right? Back in the days, there wasn't a respect for women, maybe. Women didn't have this right to vote, so on and so forth. Now we want to give them Title IX, so that way there is some respect in the terms of the protection of some of women in what they may not get or get. Now we can argue Title IX and all the benefits, are they all good and all right? But then when we talk about Biden bringing in and changing Title IX to say now men that identify as women are now officially women, biologically, scientifically, which we know is not the case, then it changes that law. That was based out of a worldview coming from somewhere, whether Biden or somebody else. But they ultimately reflect what people believe is true, right? Number three, every law assumes something about right and wrong. Every law, you break this law, that's wrong. Break this law, obey it, it's right. Every policy assumes something about human nature. Every economic system assumes something about justice and fairness. And every education system assumes something about truth and where it comes from. Every view of marriage and sexuality assumes something about what it means to be human. And every view of government assumes something about the role of the state. So we have to understand, and this is where I think a lot of people get frustrated because they want people to change their votes, but they're not willing to help them change their beliefs. And we change votes on beliefs. And this is, we'll talk in a minute about a former spy for the KGB that talked about how they infiltrated for decades. They play the long game. We're going to change a generation's thoughts and beliefs to get the votes different in 20 years from now. We may not get it right away, but it'll happen eventually, right? So before someone votes a certain way, they first believe a certain way. Politics is simply a worldview put into practice. And again, to change a nation, you must first change the worldview of its people.
And
So,
if I may,
yeah.
I think we've seen that with critical race theory
Yes.
and the oppressors and the oppressed and that type of thing. So we didn't catch that quickly. We allowed that to happen for years and years and years. And we're starting to see, well, not starting, I guess we've seen for a little while, but it's really starting to impact us politically as well as culturally.
You're naming it. Politics is the fruit of a worldview. That's the root, right? So whatever the root worldview is, it's going to produce a certain political fruit, right? So if we want to understand where we're going as a nation, we don't want to look at our elections as much as we want to look at what the people believe that are voting in our elections. Okay, now that's good, man. So I want to look at our biblical worldview and get the worldview straight on that first. Right. So if we're going to look at worldviews, the first one we need to address is a biblical worldview. I'm going to run through these pretty quickly and summarize a lot of these verses. It's very simply, God created everything. Genesis 1:1 in the beginning, God created heavens and the earth, right? Man is made in the image, man is made in God's image. Genesis 1:26-27. Let us make human beings in our image and to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, so on and so forth. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them, right? Man is fallen. Genesis 3:6-7, right? The woman was convinced. She looked at the tree, saw it was beautiful. The serpent was deceiving her. She ate the fruit, then gave it to her husband, who also ate the fruit. Sin enters the world. And then Romans 3:23, for everyone has sinned, right? We all fall short of the glory of God. Truth is objective. Another key biblical worldview. John 17:17, make them holy by your truth, teach them your word, which is truth, which is what our founding fathers were doing. Why we ended up being such an awesome country for so long. Somebody would say, well, there was slavery, right? But if you look at the world that these people came out of, right, it was slavery. We talked about the example that is in that book by Tim Barton. He uses where a slave ship landed in a harbor, was ready to sell their slaves, and the people there lived by the man-stealing law, saying you're not allowed to steal people. That's against God's law. That is capital punishment right there. And so they arrested them. They were going to kill them according to that law. And the guy was like, wait, this is what we do all around the world. This is the world we live in. We did not know this. And so that saved their lives, and they ended up getting kicked out of the country. And then they took the slaves back, a whole crew from that harbor, that city, took the whole crew of slaves back to their original country. So we have to understand that as far as the nation goes, where slavery is concerned, we abolished it much quicker than any other nation or empire in the known world.
Well, the bloodiest war ever as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was not another country coming to help us abolish it. It was us within ourselves fighting against and fighting for the freedom of other people. Morality is real. That's another worldview point that we believe in biblically. Exodus 21-17 is all about the 10 Commandments. And let's not even get into, the Sermon on the Mount and everything Jesus preached about being a morally good person and living right. Family is designed by God. Big one, Genesis 2:24. This explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. One father, one man, one father, one mother, one man, one woman, right? Matthew 19:4-6, Jesus also reiterates that same passage in Genesis 2. Work I think a lot of people might disagree with me, but work is good. Work is good. This flies in the face of some of obviously the socialist, communist agendas, right, about work. We see the woke left and the very progressive left deciding like, nope, you know what, just give it to us all so we don't have to do anything. Genesis 2:15, the Lord placed the man in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. This was before the fall. So work was good. Colossians 3:23, work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Another big one that flies in the face of other worldviews, property is stewardship. Psalm 24:1, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all its people belong to him. And then you have the parable of the talents or the three servants in Matthew 25, where we are giving something from the master to steward and to grow and to use, even though it wasn't necessarily ours in the beginning. And then government is limited under God, a word that many socialists hate to hear, limited. Romans 13:1-7, everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from who? God. And those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. I was in a conversation the other day about somebody who struggles with the idea that Biden was placed in the position he was placed in by God. I firmly believe he was. But we tend to think that, oh, God's going to place somebody that is following him in power. No, God didn't do that throughout the Old Testament a lot of times. He put Roman Empire in authority over the Jews in the New Testament, and so this idea that it has to be a God-fearing person every time God does that when a nation is obeying him and following him and their face is looking towards him. But he doesn't do that. And there's judgment that comes when a country does not. Israel is the perfect example of that. Acts 5:29 also echoes that. Peter says, in the apostles, they replied, we must obey God rather than any human authority. Salvation, and this is the last one. Salvation comes through Christ, not the state. And you pointed that out earlier, Jim, when you brought up the Constitution of the Soviet Union in 1939, you said?
36.
36.
36,
You see how they are wanting to mimic American Constitution, but knowing wholesale, if you don't give God the power and say that we have been given these things, right, as our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence explicitly states, then who's in control? Man is, and that never turns out well. So John 14:6, Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. And in Acts 4:12, there is salvation in no one else. God has given no other name under heaven by which we must save. So biblical worldview, for those of you guys listening out there, that is the worldview we espouse on the show. That's the worldview that we want everybody to have. And I don't really care if you think that I'm going to try and indoctrinate your children, but when I have an opportunity to teach, I'm going to teach them a biblical worldview. It's the best worldview. It's our founding fathers even said, there is no other worldview that has brought in a government like ours ever and never will. It is the only way to think and operate. The best by far and the best to ever come. So biblical worldview, you guys have anything you want to add or say about that?
I think you got, that was good.
All right, so here we're going to throw out some names, and I want you guys to jump in wherever, because I don't know that this covers all of it, but secular naturalist worldview, okay? Secular meaning without God, okay? So like, for instance, you got Christian music, and this is for our viewers out there, you got Christian music, that's music that is inherently Christian in tone and words, giving God the praise and glory, speaking towards Jesus Christ and those types of things. I'm not saying worship music, because there's a difference between worship and Christian music. It's all Christian, but at the same time, there's a difference. That's a whole other thing I've had with worship leaders. But then you have secular music, right? It's what the most music, almost all 80s music that I've heard is secular music. One of my favorite genres, but it is all secular music, Now, does that mean secular music is bad? No. There's a guy I can think of, Connor Price. He's a rapper. He doesn't rap explicitly Christianity. He doesn't cuss in his stuff, and he doesn't talk about, getting drunk and getting laid and violence and all these other things. He speaks to things like life and just in general, right? It's not explicitly anything about God. I would say it probably has some hints of God, whether he's a Christian or not. But secular music doesn't mean bad music. It just means without God. Okay.
Well, he did the one song with Forrest Frank.
Oh, the one he did do one with Forrest Frank. Yes, he did. And I love that too. I think, I don't know. Connor Price might be a closet Christian. Who knows? I want him to come out of the closet. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I love his stuff, man. Okay. So let's talk about some of the various tenets of the secular naturalist worldview. Number one, matter is all there is. Okay. Now, I know most young people are familiar with Neil deGrasse Tyson and his version of the cosmos, but that is not the original. The original was done by a guy named Carl Sagan. He was an American astronomer, astrophysicist. Now, and here you're going to hear some of these names. This is the thing about some of these names is a lot of these guys are intellectual, very high learned academic, and many of them are scientists. So, and that's it's a logical fallacy, right? To appeal to the expert. And so when we see things like this, some people are like, well, that guy was a biochemist, right? And he doesn't believe in God. And he says this, why? Because he's why do you believe him? He's a biochemist. I mean, come on, like really, honestly, it's a logical fallacy. Okay. He's human just like everybody else. And just like I can't appeal to the expertise of a PhD, theologian, pastor, author, whatever, I can hear him. I can listen to him. He can be wrong too. So we have to be careful of that. But let me continue with all the things that Carl Sagan was. Cosmologist, science communicator, and author. He was a professor at Cornell University and became one of the most influential voices promoting scientific naturalism through his television series Cosmos, A Personal Voyage, done in 19... That's not right. I have 08.
Probably 80.
80. And here's a quote.
I watched it on. I watched Cosmos as a kid on the what was it? Syndication.
Yeah.
And I loved it as a kid. I'm a big like science geek nerd at heart. And
I watched it too. It's cool stuff.
It's very interesting stuff. But then you learn how to marry what's true, and yeah.
Well, here's something that I didn't realize at the very beginning of that. This is what he starts off with. The cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. So from the very beginning of the cosmos, we get that line that tells us the worldview from which Carl Sagan is operating and how he is looking through a lens to evaluate the information he has determined to be without a God, and that this is what we have, right? Again, he's contributing material things as a materialist, a naturalist, to a universe, and saying the universe is all there ever was. It's the matter that we started with, it's the matter we're going to end with, and that's all there is. So there's a lot of issues with that. We're not going to go into all of that. It's a whole nother episode on other things. So that's one quote. And then we got Richard Dawkins, evolutionary biologist. He's probably one of the most famous atheists ever known in the world today. I don't really know what an ethologist is. Anybody? I'm not sure what that one is. That was part of his title. Please look it up. And I may have typed it wrong. He was an author as well. But he's one of the world's best known evolutionary biologists and perhaps the most...
animal behavior.
Okay. There we go. So one of the best known evolutionary biologists, perhaps the most influential public advocate for atheism and naturalism over the last 40 years. And he's the face of the new atheist, which I think is a dying movement at this point, to be honest with you. One of the things that he did, I'm going to say, here's the quote that he said. I'll say this first, and then I'm going to say another quote that he said on a interview he did probably, a few years ago, maybe. He says, the universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is no design and no purpose. So that's from a book, River Out of Eden, in 1995. Amazingly enough, he lives in the UK. And he is not happy, apparently. He said this. He's not happy about the cathedrals being turned into secular institutions and not a place of worship anymore. And he counts himself a cultural Christian. And this just goes to the whole idea that everybody has to live by the Christian principles. And when they reject where those principles come from, they have to borrow them, because any other worldview outside of a Christian worldview is unsustainable. And there's a couple other comments that he'll make, but some of the things he says are in line with an atheist worldview. You have to take it. If you say you're an atheist, there's certain things that you should say are true about our world, and they're hard things to say. Like there shouldn't be no purpose. There should be no value. There should be no morals, right? There is no right and wrong. Like an atheist worldview, you should You should say that. But a lot of atheists don't say that. And so, but Darwin does, or Dawkins does, and a couple of other atheists do, but they don't live that way. That's the surprising part.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you said that too. they don't live that way because I think you remember about 3 years ago we had professor of natural law David Greenberg on Faith and Politics. Very interesting discussing. Very pleasant person, by the way. If you're trying to figure out that worldview, he's a good resource to try to figure out that worldview.
Yeah.
And he's a very pleasant individual. Yeah. I'd love to have him back, honestly, to further discuss that worldview. But as we were discussing with him and talking with him, you drilled down into some things, and he find out that his life, he didn't live his way the way he preached it. Like, it didn't quite match up. Wonderful person, like I said. Nothing against the guy. He just, you're correct. They just don't. They don't practice what they preach. It's kind of a common thing. It's
the fact that he had common courtesy is evidence of Christianity. It's evidence of God. It's evidence of Jesus. There's no reason for us to be courteous to each other. What survival instinct does that actually help or provide us for, right? The strongest survive. No, if you want to really go by the strongest survive, it's pretty brutal. I don't have any reason to be courteous to anybody if I'm just trying to survive. And I think you're nailing it right there. Actually, I would love to have him on the show again on a video show. And I don't feel like I pushed back enough because I feel like I was just really listening and trying to hear his view, which was sort of muddled a little bit. And that's why I was really like, I don't know how to really address him.
Yeah.
All right. So second tenet, humans are highly evolved animals. I agree. We are highly evolved animals, but there's a difference in how I approach evolution and what I understand it to be versus what Darwin understands it to be. And that's who makes this quote. Darwin says, man must be included with the mammals, The Descent of Man, 1871. Simple quote, just meaning like, we may have evolved, but we are just as mammalian as all the other mammals. And so we're not really any different than them. It's just for some reason, which there is never an explanation, how we became highly evolved compared to the other mammals in this world, and why there's never been another species, kind, or type, or whatever you want to label it, to ever evolve to our point. I mean, people try to bring up dolphins and they try to bring up apes and some of the smartest animals out there, but they will never compare to us as human beings and what we have been able to achieve. So just if you don't know who Charles Darwin is, he's an English naturalist, geologist, and biologist whose theory of evolution by natural selection fundamentally, and I mean fundamentally, changed modern biology. However, there's a lot of pushback going now, and there's several atheists that are struggling with some of his, not necessarily natural selection, but the origins of species. I think he's struggling. There's some struggle there, and how you have to answer a question. We got in a debate, and the person wanted just to say, Christians don't understand the word evolution. They don't know what it means. The problem is we do know what it means, but we always go back to the origins of the universe, because if you're going to explain to me macroevolution, and that we came from single cell amoebas and organisms, or some primordial soup, I have a hard time with that. You need to explain that to me before you start to tell me about this macroevolution and how, a lizard became a bird, or vice versa, or how we ended up, bringing the land animal came back into the sea to become a whale. Like all these questions that I may have about evolution. Okay, I get that. But let's go back to the origin. Like, let's talk about how it all began, because those are bigger questions. But Darwin is a big, whether we agree with his conclusions or not, he is arguably the most influential figure behind the modern naturalistic understanding of life. Richard Dawkins also has something to say on this. He said, humans are products of evolution through natural selection. That was in a book called The Selfish Gene. All right, another tenet, morality is socially constructed. Oh gosh, this is such a dangerous one. Here's a new name. I've never heard of this guy before, and I might butcher his name. Yuval Noah Harari. He's an Israeli historian, philosopher, professor, and he is secular. He's an atheist. He says there are no gods, no nations, no money, and no human rights except, in our collective imagination. Okay. that was written that was said in a book called Sapiens. So,
You said his
yeah.
name perfectly, by the way, according to Google. So.
Oh, awesome. Well, there we go. I get lucky. Now, when we get to Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn,
Yeah.
I've been practicing, but I'll probably butcher that a couple of times. Morality is socially constructed. Friedrich Nietzsche, or some people say this name different. I'm saying it this way. Friedrich Nietzsche, German philosopher and one of the most influential critics of Christianity in Western history. He says there are no moral phenomena at all, only a moral interpretation of phenomena. And again, we can't live that way. Like, there's no way we can live on a subjective morality. If we try, we see what it's done in the last 20th century. I mean, the bloodiest century of all the centuries prior to it combined, because we've tried to live in a subjective reality, subjective morality.
My truth.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Identity is self-created. Okay. Jean-Paul Sartre, French philosopher, novelist, playwright, and one of the leading figures of existentialism. And so, just as far as what existentialism is, it essentially asks the question, why does life exist, or how does life exist? So it's not a bad question to ask, but depending on your worldview is going to determine how you answer that. So Jean-Paul Sartre is a atheist. He doesn't believe that God exists, right? So he's completely humanist, all about us as people. He says existence precedes essence, and he said this in Existentialism is a humanism, and what that means is you determine who you are, while existentialism's asking this question, what gives human life meaning? He's answering it, we give our own meaning. We supply our own meaning to ourselves. Guys, I'm just curious, just off the top of your head, like, what kind of problems could that create?
My truth.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this, I mean, we're hearing it all the time. We hear it every night in the news.
Yeah.
The problems. I mean, it's everything is constructed around a singular person's point of view. So their experiences are going to be different than everybody else's. So nothing's going to marry up.
Yeah. And the weird thing about it is too, is they tell us that my truth is my truth, your truth is your truth. Well, if truth is subjective, how can I trust your truth? And why should I honor it? If that's for you, why should I honor that? Again, I use the example of, you say my truth is my truth, your truth is your truth, my right is my right, your right is your right. My right is to walk into your house and walk in and take your flat screen TV off your wall and take it to my house. You can't tell me that I'm wrong for that if that's the stance that you're taking and that's the position that you're trying to tell me. Hey, man, it's my right, it's just not forward thinking, and it's like I'm going to say what I'm going to say because I feel emotional about it and it sounds good, but you have to have a logical conclusion at some point, because if we don't have that, then what do we have, right?
Yeah. Real quickly, I could poke holes in that worldview extremely quickly. Take a group of guys who've been friends for many years, and at least one of them's got a nickname, right?
Yeah.
He probably decided long ago that he was super cool, and this is how he was. And then his friends, who love him to death, certainly call him this nickname that's, to anybody else who hears it from the outside, extremely demeaning. That's right. Because they have eyes, they see it, and we all know that that's our way of, like, this way of guys getting along with each other.
Yeah.
But the objective truth is a lot different than the way you may see yourself.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
There you go. Like, there's, I think that's the end of that argument right there. Yeah. I mean, just thinking about any guy's experience. If you've ever been in a group of guys, been friends for a long time, somebody's got a nickname, or all of them's got nicknames, and they're usually, very objective about what they look like or what they sound like or anything. Think back to what was that? Saved by the Bell. They called the one kid Screech. So,
when I was younger, you remember Burger King was my way.
Yeah,
have it your way. And so that was their big thing. And one day I went into one of the restaurants and I said, "My way is free."
Mm,
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
they kind of looked at me and go, you can't have it that way.
Yeah.
But
But you said my way. You can
yeah,
have it your
so
way. I want it
it's
my
just,
way. That's free.
yeah,
You should sue.
That's a great example. I love that. I love that. That's when you tell somebody, it's like, oh, your truth is your truth. Hey, well, how about you try walking to Burger King and asking for a free burger because that's your way, you know?
yeah,
I love that. They have
didn't
to be
work.
old enough though, because I don't think they use that tagline anymore, do they?
No,
This
they
is the
don't.
rule.
Yeah, they have to be older then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, underneath that same one, identity is self-created. There's a woman named Simone, and I may butcher this one, de Beauvoir, a French philosopher, novelist, and feminist thinker. She said, "One is not born, but rather becomes," and we can see where this starts. Rather becomes a woman. We can see this as a foundation for some of the ideologies that we're hearing now. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. She wrote that in her book called The Second Sex. So that's an interesting that, again, like you said, Jim, we can look back at some of these thinkers and some of these people, some of these governments and ideologies and worldviews, and we can see sort of their foundational principles and their findings, and we can look at stuff like that quote and go, that sounds like something that we hear today, right? I was not born a man or a boy or a girl. Doctors not putting on the birth certificate the sex of the child because they don't want to place that on them and identify them when they may identify differently later. That is insanity. That is completely illogical, unreasonable, unscientific. I mean, and as a doctor, you're going against everything you learned for the 20 some odd years likely you went to school.
In Congress, I think it was yesterday, they had a hearing, and it was I can't remember where she was from, but it was a female talking to two male, like, guys that ran big. They were the head of the universities. I can't remember the universities, but they were the head of their their medical programs.
Right.
And, like, she asked them, can somebody other than a woman have a baby?
Yes, I do. Yes, I remember.
Did you hit it?
Yes.
Oh my god! And it's like
Gill, I believe.
what? Huh? Oh no, there was one yesterday.
Oh,
that
one
happened.
There,
But
there's an
Brandon
older
Gill,
one. Yeah.
yeah, Brandon Gill did that
Yeah.
too. Yeah, these gentlemen were, I don't, it's probably the wrong term for them, but these guys were like, well, a man can, a man that identifies as a woman, or a woman that and they're like, she's like, that's not what I asked you guys.
Yeah.
You're doctors. It's ridiculous. You know what the answer is.
Yeah. It's because all the 3-letter agencies out there, the AMA, the APA, the AAP, this, that, and the other organization that is now bought into this whole, transgender ideology and gender affirming care and blah, blah, blah. They bought into it mainly because of money. They see lifelong patients now, and they see that these people are going to be paying into the system now for the rest of their life once they make these permanent choices that bring permanent problems and require permanent care. And it's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate that, you have a Supreme Court justice right now on our court, and the highest court in the land, that is a female and cannot. And she says, because I'm not a biologist, I can't tell you what a woman is. Like that is a kind of, that's either a kind of ignorance that is so indoctrinated into a person, they've gone beyond all thoughts of critical thinking. Because, I mean, if you can't critically think that through, how can I expect you to critically think? In some of her dissents have been, oh my gosh, just almost just like idiotic in a sense. Like, I don't,
Jackson.
how does that even make sense to you when you're saying something like that? To know that she's sitting on the bench for our Supreme Court in our country is astonishing. And that just right there is the kind of people that the other side want to continue to put into power. And that's why we have to be aware of all of this stuff. That's why we're talking about this today, right? That's why Josh is so passionate about, I don't care. I'm going to talk about politics. There's nothing in this world that my God isn't sovereign over that I can't talk and discuss to. Nothing. Politics is absolutely one of those things, as we're trying to lay out this idea that there's no such neutral thought process to where you can exclude God out of it, or say you exclude God and that means that it's neutral now. It's in even to this next point. Truth is subjective or socially constructed. Friedrich Nietzsche, again, there are no facts, only interpretations. He wrote that in The Will to Power. Again, another name, it's French. Michel Foucault. I know the T is not going to be pronounced. French philosopher, historian of ideas, and one of the most influential thinkers behind postmodernism, critical theory, in modern discussions of power, truth, identity, and institutions. He says truth is largely a product of power structures. So purpose is invented. That's another tenet. Jean-Paul Sartre says man first exists, then creates his own purpose. There's very little we actually create, in terms of metaphysical things, you know what I mean? Things that are coming out of our mind. I think that's all placed within us by God. I think it's more of, again, we can't create truth. We can only discover it, right? And a purpose would be a truth, and we cannot create that. Bertrand Russell, British philosopher, mathematician, logician, Nobel Prize winning author. There's a little bit of there's a little resume here. In one of the 20th century's leading public intellectuals, he was also one of the most influential advocates of atheism, scientific naturalism, and secular humanism. He said this: only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair, saying that when we are in such a dire situation, do we find purpose or create it, in a sense? Not that we, not that purpose is in us, not that we have an initial value, but only when we get to this very desperate situation that we, there's no atheist in a foxhole, right? You're in such a situation that all of a sudden purpose becomes a real thing. But that's where it only starts, or where it only maybe ends or begins. In other words, life has no intrinsic purpose, right? Humans create meaning once again. Okay. Government becomes a tool for engineered equality. Karl Marx, German philosopher, economist, journalist, and revolutionary socialist. More than anyone else, Marx shaped the political and economic worldview behind communism, scientific socialism, and much of modern critical theory. So he says government should abolish class distinctions. Communist Manifesto. Okay. I mean, it depends on how you want to read that. You look at the caste system in India, right? Is that a good thing? No, not necessarily. But do we have a lower, middle, and upper class in our country? Yes, we do. But is that because we want to keep people there in the lower class, middle class, or no, we don't. It's just where we are in the choices that we make and the freedoms that we have. And we're going to talk about this idea of freedom versus equality. There's a quote going to come up here in a minute that I really, really like. It's very, very good. I think it's Whitaker. I can't remember. I'll see it here in my notes in a minute.
So that French philosopher, by the way, is Michel Foucault.
Foucault. That's right. That sounds a lot better than what I said. All right.
French was kind of one of those things I took for 3 years in high school.
It's you took French? I know why you took French. We're not going to talk about why you took French, but I know why you took French. All right. So he watched too much Pepe Le Pew is what he watched. All right. So another group that has something to say about this whole government becomes a tool for engineered equality is the Democrat Socialists of America, who have really in recent months, in the last year, have gained a real big following and are becoming much more well known. They are the largest socialist organization in the United States. It describes itself as a democratic socialist organization that seeks to replace capitalism with a democratic socialist system through political organizing, elections, labor activism, and grassroots movement. Okay. What's that?
Sorry. The interesting thing about them, because I did a deep dive on them a couple of weeks ago, is their tent is so big. They do have democratic socialists in there, but they also, at the other end of it, have people that advocate for violently overthrowing the government and
Yeah.
becoming a communist state.
Yeah.
So it's massive, the size of the different views
Yeah.
in the DSA.
Yeah, I can imagine so. And I imagine they invite that. They may not
Mhm.
want to brag about them, but they'll invite that into their, they need somebody to do the dirty work, apparently. I see a lot of our Democratic politicians doing that same thing. I think they did it in Minnesota. I think when the governor and the mayor of Minnesota, Minneapolis sit there and say and demonize the ICE agents and Trump and all of that, you're creating violence by saying, you know what, these guys are evil. When you say evil, what do you think somebody's going to do? And so they're not going to go out there and fight the power, but they put several other people, which two of them died because they believed what this governor and this mayor said, and decided, you know what, I'm going to fight the power, and now they are no longer with us. Right. It's a shame. It's a crying shame. So the DSA, they basically stand for Economic Democracy, Public Ownership, Redistribution, and Collective Solutions. And then one of the last tenets, and this is a general broad covering of this particular worldview, but salvation becomes political liberation. Karl Marx says religion is, quote, the opium of the people, unquote. Human liberation comes through revolution. So it's a crutch, and I don't know about the opium of the people, but it is my crutch. My faith in God is my crutch on which I stand on. I am a weak man. I am a weak person without God, and I need him to hold me up all the time. Absolutely. And so I'm okay with saying religion and my faith in God is my crutch. I need to lean on him constantly. So,
Marx's God is government.
Yes.
Right. So Marx wants you to, Marx wants government to be at the top of your list, because government replaces God, so that you're more willing to do things that they want you to do and not complain about it.
And I think we're going to get into this in episode 3. I think one of the interesting things is why when government ends up being the big player in all of that, but that's not, Marx sort of presents it as in, this is for the people, right? This is for all the people, right? This is for you. This is for us to be all equal, to this whole idea of equity, end up in the same place, have the same house. But I don't, a lot of people don't go to those countries and see what socialism produced. It produced these drab, concrete, poorly taken care of projects in those countries. It produced soup lines and grocery store lines and lack of supplies and quality care, medical quality care in food, and just it produced such so everybody gets the same thing, wears the same clothes, worships the same way, has the same beliefs, but that has to be run by somebody, that has to be regulated by somebody, and guess who that someone is? It's the government. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, that Marx, he's about big government, but he thinks, and I wish could have been a fly on the wall, because he never rose to any kind of government power, but he was just this individual that may have, to some degree, tried to be as, this is the best way I see, for whatever reason, I see a lot of inequality. And so, and this is where we're going to get into this conversation of freedom over inequality rather than equality over freedom. Because what happened was it produced neither. And I think that it's sort of like Darwin, right? You make these claims and these statements, and then you can actually get to see the end result of it. And you see, well, it's not turned out. I mean, he ended up in America. He ended up living in capitalist America, being run out of where he was at I think he was in the UK at one point, but ended up in our own country, espousing the same ideas, thinking, I'm going to hold tight to this idea because, maybe it didn't work out so well in communist Russia, but maybe it can be different here. And I think that's the thing that a lot of young people think, no, we're not talking about strictly that kind of socialism. We want more of a Denmark socialism, which is it's not even a socialist country. We want more of a Swedish, or we want more of a Norwegian. Like, that's not socialism. That's not what Marx wanted.
No, the private sector still owns the means of production.
Yes.
Countries.
Yeah. Here's some verses I think for this section. They're good. Josh, did you have some?
Real quickly. So the reason it's pseudo works in those countries specifically is because those countries are very homogenous in their beliefs already.
Yeah,
They already
exactly.
had like a combined, everybody's of a certain kind of background. Everybody has a certain kind of religion. They already was already like everything was already very homogenous to begin with. That's why it works there. But it's very small.
They're like large cities.
Yeah.
They're like LA. They're like New York City. They're like large cities. Just it's
still spread out. So they're still very rural in their living. So even with that, and even when they get a little more urban, it's still like that's like in town where I live. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's just not enough people. You can't sustain it on a small scale like that. That kind of system can work.
Yeah,
because it's small. It's a small scale and it's homogenous.
Yeah.
But you add in any other group, you start changing it up, like what the UK is going through right now, where they get overrun by this other culture, and it changes up the whole thing. And that was what would happen in these countries once they start bringing in these other cultures and things where it's not it doesn't agree with that unity that's already in that society because of the homogeny.
Yeah.
The whole thing falls apart. There goes the system, and then you end up with one person at the top, just like you said.
Yeah, you can't really compare us to any other country. There's just no comparison,
Nothing
really,
like
honestly.
And the other thing, just real quick before we move off of that, the other reason that they can do that is because we've paid for their protection for the last 70 years.
Yeah,
and they have extra money that they don't have to put into, keeping the red horde back because we're doing it for them. So I think I think what you say absolutely makes perfect sense. The other thing is they're not really living in reality. We've since the Marshall Plan went into effect, we've been funding their defense, and so I mean it's
that's why Trump's jumping so hard on trying to get NATO. Look, we're not doing anything till you get your defense funds up. And they had a percentage, and it sounds like quite a few of them are trying to get there, but like even France right now is not, Germany is, and it's like, look, we're not fighting your wars anymore. We can't keep doing this for you guys. You should be fighting, Russia against the Ukrainians. Like, this is your issue, your continent, not ours. And I love Trump for pushing that and finally standing up and saying enough is enough. It's like, listen to Live Free podcast today about, USAID, USAID. People are like, oh, he just doesn't care about humanitarian needs. It's like, you need to dig into what that was doing and where the money was going. And like, I'm not going to get into it. You can watch the episode, but it's insane that people want to compare us. Say we need to be like these guys. I did an article on a 7-8 series article series on the warmth of collectivism, and one of those was about Denmark not being the socialist country you think it is. And some of the comments that their prime minister has made about stop comparing us to socialism, like we're not. So there's a whole section on that, but. Some verses to leave with this when it comes to naturalism, this worldview in the biblical worldview. Do not be taken captive by philosophy and empty deceit. Colossians 2:8. Romans 1:18-25 talks about exchanging the truth of God for a lie. 2 Corinthians 10:5. Take every thought captive. In Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Notice that every single one of these is within our mind. It's what our mind does. Philosophy, we ask questions, we seek logical conclusions, we're looking for reasonable thoughts and understandings. We need to take our thoughts captive, make it obedient to the mind of Christ, and understand knowledge is not a bad thing. Information helps us make decisions. But we can make wrong decisions if we don't have the mind of Christ. And so we need the beginning of knowledge, which is knowledge of the Lord. All right. So digging in a little bit more in this whole secularism and naturalism and what it's doing to our country. We're going to do a little bit compare and contrast when it comes to these worldviews and Christianity. Number one. So this is a thought that I heard a pastor make. When a nation loses God, it becomes more socialist. And I actually just did an article on this. Now we can say socialism, we can make that a political governmental statement, yes. But generally, when a nation loses God, we become more secular. And when we become more secular, our decisions become less neutral. They're not becoming more neutral. They are just as partisan or, black and white, right or wrong, or however you want to look at it, as they were when it was a Christian-led, Christian-founded nation, right? But we're just exchanging now when we look at these spheres, family, church, and God. Family, church, and state. Those spheres are what's operating in our world today. And when family and church are not looking towards God, or the church is looking less towards God, then it starts to lose its place as far as humanitarian needs and taking care of the widow and the orphan and those types of things that we used to do more of becomes less. Well, somebody's got to fill that gap, right? And we look at the Great Depression when the church could not sustain taking care, and it just couldn't, because it was a massive depression that affected our entire country. Well, guess who had to step in? The government. The government stepped in with FDR doing the New Deal, and with all of that, we ended up later on. The Great Society. Sorry, I think it was the Great Society, which comes first. Was the New Deal first, and Great Society was
Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah. So we have these things that are happening where government is now moving out of this idea of justice and taking care of right and wrong and maintaining those things and protection. Now it's starting to step into the morality of things in the church and what the church should be taking care of. And then eventually, guess what? It wants to continue to grow its tentacles. Now it's going to move into education, and that's where the family is. And, it just starts to take over. It just becomes a unmanageable beast. So, secularism pretends to be neutral, but it is not. Everyone starts with an assumption about God, truth, humanity, and morality. If you reject one worldview, you replace it with another. It isn't a matter of whether a worldview will shape society. It is which worldview is going to shape society. So if you remove God, it removes God from public authority. It replaces him with the state, the self, the experts, the ideology, therapy, and identity politics. All of which of these we can say has happened since 2020. And just outright, okay? The state has taken over more control, led everybody to believe that we needed to go under these mandates, these COVID mandates, and do all these things and shut down everything. And it's actually caused more issues doing that than it did staying open. The experts, Fauci, becoming the expert, actually a fraud. The ideology, I think it was an experiment that side of the aisle wanted to take on. The secularists wanted to see how much power could we have? How much control can we have if we scare everybody half to death? Therapy. We have more therapy happening now in our world, in people's lives than ever before, and we are not a better and healthier mental country. Our mental health is in the toilet. And then, of course, identity politics came out of 2020, and we're seeing that continuously play out. Intersectionality, and who's the bigger victim here, who's the most oppressed here, and obviously who is the victimizer and who is the oppressor. Naturalism says there is no creator, no soul, no final judgment, no objective purpose. What does that leave us with, right? We just listened to a bunch of really supposedly smart people say there is no purpose, or we created ourselves. But I've never known anybody to create their own purpose to actually feel fulfilled or satisfied by that. We wonder why we see the violence we do in our youth today when we have removed the Bible and prayer out of schools. We've removed purpose, literally. And I don't think people see it that way, but we have literally removed purpose out of our schools. And when people can't conjure up their own value, they can't conjure up their own purpose, and they're never satisfied when they try to, and then they try to cover it up with addictions. And those addictions don't help. What are we left with? An extremely high suicide rate, violence, angry people. A lot of the fruit that comes from that kind of worldview is going to produce what we are starting to see now, and will only get worse if we continue down this path. You agree or disagree?
I totally agree with you, and was actually going to make the comment. This experts,
Mm,
government through experts, started at Woodrow Wilson,
yeah.
and it's been getting bigger ever since. I mean, even so-called conservatives are adding to this worldview
Yeah.
by making government bigger. Well, if you can do the Department of you can do the IRS. Well,
Right.
I can create the Department of Education.
Yeah.
So even people that say that they're the other way,
Yeah.
right, the other worldview, are doing the same thing, probably for different reasons
Yeah.
than the folks that are driving this. But if we don't stop this,
Hmm.
we're gonna roll right off the tracks, because
Yeah.
we've been losing ground since 1914.
Yeah. And I feel like the ball of snow is rolling bigger and faster now.
Yeah.
I think we're hearing more things, the quiet part said out loud, more than I have ever heard.
Mhm.
Like, wow, did they just actually say that out loud? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just heard that with my own ears on a news station that's reports that has millions of viewers.
Yeah.
Um, the so okay, let me repeat those things that naturalism says: there is no creator, no soul, no final judgment, no objective purpose. Now, from a Christian biblical worldview, we can see there is a spirit of the Antichrist behind all this, because when we have founded America, we founded it on a creator, right? The creator. We had moral law, human dignity, accountability, and it was an ordered liberty, right? All of it pointing towards God. Whether you were a deist that didn't fully believe in Jesus as the divine Lord and Savior, or you were a Christian wholeheartedly, like, it was just a common understanding, right? Is it no surprise that when we remove God out of more of the public sphere, it's not going to be a void, an empty space? Satan is more than glad to fill that space, right? And so when that happens, yeah, naturalism starts to gain ground. There is no more of a creator. There is no soul. You don't have to worry about hell or the afterlife. You just die and go in the dirt, right? There's no judgment. And if there's none of these things, then really your purpose, you can make it up as you go, do whatever you want. It just doesn't matter. So it is no surprise that we're seeing a contrast and opposite effect and in what that produces. What it was producing versus what it wasn't producing. If naturalism true, rights are not endowed by the creator. Okay. They are invented by us human beings, because we're so infallible and so inerrant. And then, of course, as we know, whatever we invent, we can also erase. No, we can do that. So Josh, I know we are coming up to those articles I wanted you to pull up. So if you could pull up the first one for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Dagnar. Appreciate it.
Is that the right one?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
All right. 1 second. Okay, so I want you to scroll down for me. So this title, it sounds encouraging. It really does. Decline of Christianity in the U.S. has slowed, may have leveled off. So we'll get into it deeper. But really, honestly, since the 1950s and 60s, we have seen for the first time a decline in those who were embracing or identifying as Christians, and it has been on a pretty quick decline ever since then. Okay. But in recent years, we started to see a little bit of a leveling off. It sort of slowed down a little bit. Now that's encouraging. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad to see that. And we're seeing actually an uptick in young adult males from the ages, I think, of 18. I think it goes to 28, 29. So we're seeing a little encouragement now. So if you scroll down for me though, Josh, there is a graph. Let's see.
It's kind of hard to get it to be big enough here to see.
And I'll read it as well. Okay. So there's a graph on there that says 7% of U.S. adults now identify with a religion other than Christianity. Okay, so Jewish from 2007. This goes from 2007 to 2024, by the way. So in 2007, 1.7% Jew people identified as Jewish, and it still about holds the same today. Okay, and we see a little bit of an uptick in Muslims or in Islam, a little bit of an uptick in Buddhists, and a little bit of a rise of Hindu. And then we have other non-Christian religions rising to about 2.2. Okay. But there is this religion simply called the nuns. All right. It's not really a religion, it's just atheists. And so what we've seen there is a little bit alarming. Religiously unaffiliated adults, those who identify as atheists, agnostics, or as nothing in particular, or in other words, they call themselves nuns, when asked about their religion, account for 29% of the population in this new poll. The size of the religiously unaffiliated population, which we sometimes call religious nuns, has plateaued in recent years after a long period of sustained growth. Now, that growth, though, however, though it's sort of flattened out a little bit from just 2004 to 2024. If you go to the next article for me, Josh.
Got it.
That one gets into it a little bit more.
Religious identity, right?
Yep. So what we can see here is,
Trying to pull up that chart. It's kind of hard to get the zoom to work. It's kind of haphazard here.
and I like this one because it does sort of divide it up in sort of like a demographic as well, which I think is really, really interesting. Okay. So the picture is reversed for the religiously. So the paragraph above, it says, the data shows that the Christian share of the population has declined across many demographic groups. Compared with 2007, the percentage of people who describe themselves as Christians is lower among men and women, college graduates, and those with less education, all racial and ethnic groups large enough to analyze, all age groups, and all geographic sectors of the country. The picture is reversed for the religiously unaffiliated, a group sometimes referred to as religious nuns. The nuns are made up of U.S. adults who describe themselves as atheists, agnostics, or nothing in particular when asked about their religion. The ranks of nuns have grown among men and women, married and unmarried people, college graduates, and people with less education, all large racial and ethnic groups, all age groups, and in all regions of the country. It further says, let's see. Okay. About 3 in 10 Americans, now this is actually a whole section of it, trends among religiously unaffiliated Americans. About 3 in 10 Americans, 29%, are religiously unaffiliated, according to the 2023-2024 RLS report. This includes 5% who identify as atheists, 6% who say they are agnostic, and 19% who describe their religion as nothing in particular. The share of Americans who are religiously unaffiliated, also known as religious nuns, is markedly higher in the 2023-24 than it was in 2007, which was 16% in 2007, 23% in 2014. So there's a pretty big jump in the 7 years between 07 and 14, and a little less of a jump between, actually, I take that back. It was about the same between 14 and 24. In the last several years, however, the growth of the nuns seems to have slowed. While the percentage of nuns varies across social and demographic groups, the direction of the trend from 2007 to 2024 is the same across the board. It is up at least marginally in every category. Among Americans born in this is interesting to me. Among Americans born in the 1980s, for example, 26% were religiously unaffiliated in 2007. In 2023-2024, that same share, that same demographic stands at 37%. Okay. The percentage of nuns has also has grown among both men and women, among married and unmarried. We already went through all that. But I find it interesting that in 1980, was there a particular war, maybe not a physical war, but a war happening during that time?
Yeah.
between Carter and Reagan. What was that war called, Jim?
Oh, the war between Carter and Reagan.
No, not between. I'm just saying during their
I'm sorry.
tenure.
The Cold War. Right?
The Cold War, right? And that dealt with a particular group of people that were communist Russia, right? The USSR, as it was named at the time, unabashedly communist, right? And we even had, I know we had the Red Scare decades before that, but we've always had this suspicion about this idea of communists infiltrating our country. We got spies, and we can go on and on about that. But I think in a less obtrusive way, there has been this idea like, you know what? And Marx again was here in the United States for the latter part of his life, to share this idea of Marxism and to start to get it into let's get it into our colleges and universities, because you know what? Just like critical theory, we need to discuss it at least. And some people started to latch onto it. They become our professors, or they become teachers out there in the real world. They start to move into our K through 12 grades. And I don't see it as any surprise that as this ideology, which is purely secular and without God, is starting to be taught in the 60s and 70s, and we start to develop a generation of people coming out of the 80s now producing what we see now as a very secular education system. Agree or disagree? What do you guys think? It's a trend I am seeing.
Go ahead, Josh.
You got it.
You want me to? Okay. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that statement. But that's their plan.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They've taken steps to influence and do those types of things. They have program, and it's not just the Russians. It's the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they are taking actual steps to destroy our government, destroy our society from within. And critical theory is one of the ways that they can do that. Birthright citizenship, where they're, the what do they call it? The tourist. They come in as tourists and leave as American citizens.
Some of these CEOs and Chinese companies, they will have women over here that will have their children. Yep, and they'll go to our universities. They'll go to our universities, all under the guise of wanting to be American, but supplanting us in so many ways.
Yeah. So this is definitely a trend, and this is the plan. This is. I mean, Lenin and Stalin both said that we will take ourselves down. They won't have to. Yeah.
That's two very good quotes by two very evil men, in my opinion. Yeah. Josh, bring up the next one, the Gallup report. And both of them are Gallup reports, but this one's about church membership.
If it'll let me, I guess I got to take it off here first. I had the tabs kind of confused here. That's the Gallup poll. Well, if it'll now my tabs are not working. Oh, it just I
just crashed the system.
I'll go back and pull it from our communications here.
Well, while Josh is putting that up there again, we'll have the link in our show notes. This is from Gallup. It's titled "U.S. Church Membership Falls Below Majority for First Time." Now, this is 2021. Okay, so this is not a recent article, but that's a big statement. U.S. church membership falls below majority for the first time. Now, we were founded in 1776, unless you want to believe the 1619 Project. But 1776 was when our country was established as the United States of America. And 2021, it's good time away, but now we're getting to the point to where people do not go to church as much anymore. 2020, 47% of the U.S. adults belong to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down more than 20 points from the turn of the century. American membership in houses of worship continued to decline last year, dropping below 50% for the first time in Gallup's 8-decade trend. In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down from 50% in 2018 and 70% in 1990. It gets even worse. U.S. church membership was 73% when Gallup first measured it in 1937 and remained near 70% for next 6 decades before beginning a steady decline around the turn of the 21st century. As many Americans celebrate Easter and Passover this week, Gallup updates a 2019 analysis that examined the decline in church membership over the past 20 years. And see if you go further down. Generational differences linked to change in church membership. Church membership is strongly correlated with age, as 66% of traditionalist U.S. adults born before 1946 belong to a church, compared with 58% of baby boomers, 50% of Gen X, 36% of millennials. The limited data Gallup has on church membership among the portion of Generation Z that has reached out adulthood are so far showing church membership rates similar to those for millennials. The decline in church membership then appears largely tied to population change, with those in older generations who are likely to be church members being replaced in the U.S. adult population with people in younger generations who are less likely to belong. The change has become increasingly apparent in recent decades because millennials and Gen Z are further apart from traditionalists in their church membership rates, about 30 points lower than baby boomers and Generation X are, which are a difference between 8 and 16 points between those two. Also, each year, the younger generations are making up an increasingly larger part of the entire U.S. adult population. Still, the population replacement does not fully explain the decline in church membership, as adults in the older generations have shown roughly double-digit decreases from 2 decades ago. Church membership is down even more, 15 points in the past decade among millennials. So the reason why I'm reading this is because we're seeing less of our younger generations attend church and go to church. And again, it does include Christian churches, Muslim churches, and mosques and synagogues. Okay, so I don't want to take away from that, but synagogues and mosques weren't a large part of the church membership in the first place. So we have really the Protestant churches, and we can probably add in Catholic churches as well. We have seen a decline there, probably more than synagogues and mosques. And again, I go back to this idea where really this idea of atheism, it is honestly pretty young religion, in my opinion. It's a young ideology. We can look back, and even if you weren't a Christian, most people, and even still today, I'll still say the majority of the people in the world believe in a divine being of some sort or in some way, or follow some kind of faith. That's just the majority of the world. Atheism is still a very small minority in our world, but it is rapidly growing, and we're seeing it result in less church membership as well. And so even though we're seeing a plateau in some areas, we're seeing a rise with some of the Gen Z young men. It's quite evident that Satan has found a way to really hone in on this idea of, what, just like I said, doubt God in the beginning. Did he really say that you would die, or did he really say that would happen? It's one of those things. If I can get them to forget God or forget me, that's probably the best way for me to go about things. And he's being pretty successful with this right now. And it's based in entire governments, in entire establishments that are doing this, not just like the one-off individual Marx guy. It's entire governments adopting this thought process. You can go ahead and take that down, Josh, and go to the last one if you wouldn't mind. And this is sort of saying the same thing too.
Yeah.
Americans' religious engagement holds at lower levels. 47% consider religion very important. Religious nuns tick up to 24%, which is 29% now, but this is a little bit of an older article. Well, it's actually March 3rd, 2026. This is something I find very interesting. The percentage of Americans, the very first paragraph, and we'll probably just go with it here because it's sort of repeating the same thing. The percentage of Americans who say religion is very important in their lives has leveled off below 50% in recent years, including 47% in 2025. The reading has been gradually declining from 58% in 2012 and was as high as 70 to 75% in the 50s and the 60s. Meanwhile, in each year since 2022, 28% of Americans have said religion is not very important in their lives. There is no wonder why we are starting to see certain policies and allowances in our country. You can go ahead and take that down, Josh, to happen, right? It makes sense when we look at this stuff. If we look at our country and where it was founded all the way up to the 1950s, 60s, the trend is I've talked about enlightenment before, moving into the industrialization period, sort of where we start to see this idea of, hey, maybe we can think about God without God, right? So we're going to start to be intellectual, but we don't need God to do this anymore. We come out of that enlightenment period, although there were some Christians that really adopted the enlightenment period and this idea of critical thinking and intellectualism. But then we get into, this is when atheism starts to really find its rise, in that during that period. And then we get into the industrialization period where we're starting to become more of an urban society and less agricultural. And so that was a big reason for the strength of a family, was that agricultural type of society that we lived in. And then when we moved into the cities, there was a lot less need for that. And then the men started being removed from the homes, working longer hours, putting more on the women. The children weren't around their fathers anymore as much. And so we just started to see the steady decline that's happening. All the while, underneath all of that is the secularization of our society. Go ahead.
It's interesting because I remember, like in school, when you think of this, in school, I had some periods where I struggled with certain classes and things. And I remember my mother kind of sitting at the table with me, helping me do some of the stuff, or my father could do, the different subjects, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that separated the family, I think, was this common core education that we went to, because I tried to sit down with my daughter and help her. I have absolutely no idea what the heck they're teaching these kids now. And so I think you go back to, we talked about schools and critical race theory. Now we've got common core. So it's almost like the schools are pulling the family apart, which is hurting, which is reducing the amount of people that are going to church. And I think that those things are all kind of tied together.
Definitely. With Common Core math specifically. So you'll notice the formula if you look at the formulas of Common Core math, what does it break everything down to? Ones and zeros. Well, when you turn on and off and program a computer, what is it all? Ones and zeros.
Yeah.
What is the brain? The brain is a computer programmed. Why do they teach them that way? Is so that they can be more easily programmed. Because if this is the way they learn how math works, because math is foundational to everything else your brain learns in life. If your brain learns that certain pattern that way, because math is universal.
Yeah.
If it learns it that way, as opposed to the way we've all known it for always, you're more easily programmable. They can then gaslight you into all kinds of things. And that's why you're seeing such a big shift. Except for the young people that have, said, look, you gave me the internet at my fingertips for the entirety of my life. Right. You have these young people that have done that, and they're going, I looked for the truth actively. And then they opened up a Bible, a physical Bible, and they were like, look, buddy, every time I ask this thing a question, it answers me, and I ain't finding it on the internet. Yeah. That's why you're, regardless of what they're saying in these research polls, I know what I can witness with my own two eyes. These young people are coming back to church. Most of them are going more Orthodox or into Catholicism because it's so structured.
Yeah.
But the ones who do come to the Protestant church, the youth group at my church specifically, I'm going to go anecdotal real quick. It's not proof of across the board, but watching those young kids week after week, that is the one group that goes and prays together.
Yeah.
Like the these kids have broken the mold from what they've been programmed to do outside of the church. Because think about every one of these kids are on TikTok or whatever. You know what they're doing with each other?
Mm.
They're not sitting there doing all their dances, which they do from time to time, of course. But
Right.
most of these kids that are in the youth group, they're doing Bible study together with each other on TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah.
This culture will turn back, I believe.
Mm.
And so I have hope when I look at those things.
Yeah.
And then to the point you were talking about before, Danny, I looked this up. So approximately 85 to 90% of the world's population believes in God or some higher power.
Yeah.
This includes affiliated with traditional religions, as well as those who identify as spiritual or even not necessarily religious, but they believe in a higher power.
Yeah.
Organized religion is 75 to 80%, which, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, those are the big ones. Spiritual but not religious, about 10%. And then agnostic or atheist, those last few people, that's where that goes into that 10 to 15%, because
Yeah.
people kind of flip-flop in that last little 5%.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to become more and more religious as things start happening.
Well, I think what's amazing is that the largest Christian country in the world is starting to be infiltrated and sort of overrun with secularism, and it's still very much a minority in this country. Mm-hmm. But because it has such a loud voice and it has learned to take advantage of certain tools in our country, media, politics, businesses and marketing and all that stuff, it's been able to learn how to take the largest megaphone in our country and voice its ideas and try to push down everything else and insult or demonize Christians. That it's started to really have an impact, and they've also been very smart. Again, we're about to get into Marxism here. Marx was very smart in saying, hey, we need to educate people. We need to educate kids on this. That's what the Russians did. It's what the Chinese do. It's what the Cambodians, that's what Pol Pot did. It's what Mao Zedong, that's what, all of the big dictators, they just completely changed everything. And they found out if we can change the youngest generations, they will bend to us and they will do everything we tell them to do without question, including putting their own parents in prison. And so it's quite, and we're seeing that right now. We're seeing, kids fight their parents on, I want to be identified as this. And parents are like, no, you're not that, So what they run to another state like Washington State so that they can get their gender affirming care, or they can go to their teacher in California and say something. And teacher says, great, I'm going to help you through that process, but I don't have to tell your parents, they know that these things are out there. And so this is tough, and I think really it doesn't start obviously with Marxism. This has been a long time ago. This is just, Satan got a hold of a guy that gave him through an idea in his head, and he thought this was great. And it's totally Satan using this idea. So I want to talk about that real quick. I'm going to do some contrasting with Marxism because there's some questions I'm going to ask, and I'm going to give Christianity's answer and Marxism's answer, and we can see the difference. The question is, what is wrong with the world? Christianity says sin. Very simple. Covers everything. Marxism says oppression and class structures. Question, who is the villain? Christianity says sin, Satan, death, rebellion against God. Marxism says the oppressors, right? All those that are oppressed, the oppressed. Who is the savior? Christianity obviously says Jesus Christ. Marxism says, nope, revolution, state, power, collective liberation. What is redemption? In Christianity, reconciliation with God. Marxism, overthrowing unjust systems, right? Problem with that is, one, you throw an unjust system over for a just system. It's just a matter of time before that system becomes unjust and you overthrow that one. So where does it end? What is justice? Christianity says righteousness under God. Marxism says equalized outcomes through power. Marxism the explanation for the following ideas. When they talk about materialism, they say matter and economics explain reality. Class conflict to them is society is oppressor versus oppressed. Revolution, existing structures must be overturned. That's a big word for them. You'll hear revolution all the time. We're hearing it right now. We hear it with the, what's the group that doesn't exist, but we constantly are getting people, Antifa. Thank you very much. They're always talking about revolution, right? Yeah. Abolition of private property as traditionally understood, right? Nobody can own their own property. That's just not right. I mean, we can't have trillionaires. He needs to give up some of that money. He could feed every starving person in the world. Suspicion of religion. There is a suspicion of religion with Marxism. He calls it the opium for the masses, right? Suspicion of family. Look, I don't know that we can necessarily have a mom and a dad in the household. I think we should probably get the dad out of the house. That breaks down the family immediately. It's not the mom they want to remove; it's the dad. That's just they know. They're not dumb. They know that the father is the strong force. That's the one thing that bugs me so much about black on black violence. And the poverty rate and the issues we see in the black community is there are some that are like, we're not solving our problems saying the same dumb stuff. It is because the fathers in the home, and this happened obviously during the 60s when they started to come out with the Great Society and the I want to switch that. I think the New Deal was under Johnson.
No, the New Deal was definitely FDR.
That just bothers me. And then what's the other? The Civil Rights Acts and all of those things. And then what's the other big?
Oh, well, social programs.
Medicare, Medishare, all that. Medicaid, I mean, not Medishare. I'm on Medishare. Those things. That's where we started to see the family really start to break down. It was already on its way, but when you start to put people on welfare and they just now there's no incentive, they're entitled just to get paid by the government. And the dads are like, well, I'm not going to stay with this woman. I'm going to go do my own thing and do whatever I want. Like, the morality gets broken down. All of this gets broken down. And of course, we're going to start to see the family unit is one of the strongest things. It's its own sphere. It's its own God. It just models that even within the Trinity, this idea of family is extremely important to him. And Satan hates it. And then obviously suspicion of an inherited morality, right? Meaning something that we have inherited from something else, a divine being, obviously in our situation, God, where they're like, you know what? No, you create your own morality. You don't have to inherit somebody else's. You do what you want type deal. And then the state becomes the instrument of transformation. That's how they solve everything through the state, right? Where the contrast in the Bible, Marxism says man's problem is outside him. Christianity says, nope, it's inside us. Marxism says, change the system and you can change the man, where Christianity says, change the heart, and redeemed people can build better systems. Marxism creates permanent resentment, and Christianity calls people to repentance, forgiveness, justice, work, stewardship, and reconciliation. It's just so opposite. It's so hard to ignore that there isn't something else dark and what's the not insidious something. It's just a principality behind everything that is moving all of this, pushing all of this, right? So look, if you really want to do the study of Marxism, Communist Manifesto would be his first thing, written by Marx and Engels. It's a political pamphlet, really is what it is. It was published first in 1848. It presents a theory of history centered on class struggle and argues that capitalism would ultimately be replaced by a communist society. Despite its brief length, it became one of the most influential political texts of the modern era. So what it argues that historical development is driven by conflicts between social classes, particularly between the bourgeoisie, which are owners of capital, and the proletariat, which is the working class. So the rich people, elite, they own everything, but the proletariat's doing all the work for the elite to own everything. Marx and Engels argue that capitalism creates immense productive power, but also generates inequalities and tensions that will eventually lead to revolutionary change. The pamphlet is a foundational document for many socialist and communist movements. Then he also wrote Das Kapital, is a foundational work of the political economy by Karl Marx. So he goes more into an economic version of his ideas that analyzes how capitalist economies function. First published in 1867, it had a lasting influence on economics, sociology, political theory, and labor history, and while remaining one of the most debated and interpreted books in the social sciences. The book develops concepts such as the commodity value, surplus value, capital accumulation, and the tendency of competition to reshape production. Marx argues that workers create more value than they receive in wages. with the difference becoming surplus value, which he presents as the basis of profit under capitalism. He also explores technological change, economic crisis, and the concentration of capital. This is where we get people that want to have a $20 minimum wage. It just doesn't make sense. It's not sustainable. But that's sort of where this is coming from, right?
That's my response to that.
Yeah. Das Kapital became one of the most influential works of modern social and political thought. And then there was another one that he wrote, The Critique of the Gotha Program, is a political text written by Marx in 1875 as a response to the draft platform of the newly unified German socialist movement. Although unpublished during Marx's lifetime, it became one of his most influential writings because of his critiques of socialism, the state, labor, and the transition to a communist society. So that's just sort of our sources where we look at. He says it himself. We're not making these things up. It comes directly from what Marx's words, but we also have examples, right? So we can look at what words might say, but how has this actually played out? And it's interesting what some people will say about how this played out. Oh, well, maybe that's not Marx, what actually he wanted to happen. But these countries that I'm about to mention here are responsible for the most deaths of the 20th century, okay? Start off with the Soviet Union, formerly USSR, now Russia. People's Republic of China, very much still a communist country. Cuba, North Korea, Cambodia. Okay, that's the people in the past in the history. Cambodia was Pol Pot. You had Mao Zedong. You had Stalin, Lenin in Russia. Fidel Castro in Cuba. North Korea is a long line of people since the Korean War. Right? It is devastating what these people did. 100 million or more. Maybe slightly less, doesn't matter. That's a lot of deaths as a result. And the crazy thing is, a lot of it was by starvation.
Yeah.
Not even going out there and just blanket killing people and their own people.
Well, yeah, that happened because of the collective farming. What they did was, as they said, because they do those 5-year economic plans and they don't adjust them. So basically, you, Josh, are responsible to give me this much wheat. And if you don't give me that much wheat, I'm taking all of it and I'm leaving none of it with you. Yeah. You're the guy that starves. So who knows how to plant the wheat next season?
Nobody.
Right? Nobody.
Yeah. It's a devastating way of trying to run a country. And I don't know why anybody, and again, we're going to get into why would anybody want to do this? Run a country this way or want this to happen again. And we're going to get into that in another episode because it has to be talked about because we have so many people now. I mean, I'm seeing report after report after report of young people that support socialism in this country, that are okay with that's celebrating people like what's his name? Che Guevara, or the Venezuelan, formerly, no longer Chavez. It's just like, because they're revolutionaries, right? Oh, they were revolutionaries. So some people I will bring up, we're going to talk about just a second here in our next segment here. Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn. I'm going to say Alexander. So we'll talk about him here in just a minute more in depth. Whitaker Chambers, he was a former Soviet spy, lived during this time. Milovan Djilas, or Gillis, I don't know how you pronounce that, Djilas, former communist official, he said some things about living in this kind of world. Natan Sharansky, imprisoned in the Soviet Union, and Václav Havel, author of The Power of the Powerless, are some names that you can look up and do a little deep dive. Key verses here, James 4:1-2, conflict comes from passions within. Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all. Mark 7:21-23, evil comes from within the human heart. 2 Thessalonians 3:10, if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. Ephesians 4:28, work honestly so you have something to share. Look, we're not asking you guys that are listening to believe what critics of Marxism say. We're asking you to read him yourself, okay? read these things that I just laid out, look at the historical record of these countries, these nations, these empires, and see what happened there and some of the people that were in power. And then just listen to some of these voices, do your own dive and study on some of this. You don't have to dig deep. And that's basically where we're going to start and end with Marxism. They'll come back up here in a minute. This last segment is just this idea of this record on communism. Like, what is the record of communism and socialism in our world, in our history? What does that look like? What does that mean? So if you're screaming for socialism, right, this is what it promises. It's pretty on the outside, but it's pretty nasty on the inside. Socialism promises compassion, but often produces control, dependency, scarcity, and coercion. And there's an underlying thing here that I'm going to mention here at the end of this that I think is the root of all of it, other than sin. That's what we believe. Sin is the root of all of it. But there's something here a book that I love, everybody should read, about Alexander, by the way, coming up. So every generation thinks this time will be different, right? Capitalism's bad. It's evil. Let's go back to socialism. It'll be different this time. No, it won't. It just
Never is.
It's like somebody knows. It's like somebody's been around since the beginning of time, and he's evil and he's super smart and he knows human nature better than we tend to acknowledge, right? Yeah, you go ahead. Who tells you socialism's not good? It's like Garden of Eden, right? Who told you socialism isn't good? Try it again, man. You just did it wrong. And something that is in this book that I will just go ahead and say it, and I mentioned in Gord's book by Rod Dreher. It's based on Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn, called "Live Not by Lies." And it is actually something Alexander wrote called "Live Not by Lies," but Rod Dreher is part of the inspiration of his book that he has. And one of the things it says, it never starts with gulags. And this is the underlying thing that's sort of what we saw in the example we get from communism, China and Russia and all that happened there, Cambodia. That was hard totalitarianism. And the book points out that what we're not understanding is we have soft totalitarianism happening right now in our country, and it will ultimately eat up everything and become hard totalitarianism, which is ultimately what Marx said. It ends in communism, a communist country, right? So it's going to start with these words. These are key words that you will hear, that we have heard, right? Moral language. That's what all of these are. This is all moral language. Starts with fairness. Got to have fairness, right? We all got to be fair. Okay, well, that doesn't sound bad. Equity. Equity. Most people don't know what that really means, but okay, equity. Sounds like equality. It must be the same thing. Nope, it's not.
Not even close.
Justice. Yeah, justice. Good thing. We want justice. Compassion. Yep. Definitely want compassion. Equality. Yeah, we definitely want equality. Free things. Definitely want free things, right? And then people should always be over profits. Always. We should always have people over profits, right? So this is the language that we hear, and we're hearing it right now. We hear it from what's her name, Pocahontas,
Elizabeth
Warren, right? We hear it from her. We hear it from Bernie Sanders. We hear it from AOC. We hear it from all the DSAs, right? We hear it from Mamdani now. Okay, like we're hearing all this language, but this is the reality: is what happens, and we're seeing it happen actually in real time in New York City. The incentives begin to collapse, right? You take away all of these things like, fairness, okay, so we got to regulate all that. In order to have all that, we've got to set the atmosphere, right? We have to throw out some policies that are going to create the atmosphere for us to have fairness, equity, justice, compassion, equality, free things, and people over profits. So our capitalist society right now, it doesn't fit for that. We're not seeing fairness, equity, justice, compassion, equality, free things, people over profits. We're not seeing that supposedly, right? Okay, so you know what? We need to change some laws. We need to bring some policy. And then what happens is the incentives are gone. Productivity goes away. We've seen this in our healthcare system, right? We've seen this happening, right? Government power grows. We developed the DHS and the DOE, and we developed this department of this and this department of that, and that department to regulate this and that department to regulate that. We've grown IRS, and we've given added 80,000 IRS agents and given them guns for some stupid reason, like all these crazy things, right? Yeah, it grows. Dissent becomes dangerous. We see that. One of the things that blows my mind is when a black person decides to switch parties and has good reason for switching parties. Ask the right questions of those that are still in the party formerly they were in, and those people don't have an answer. Well, we just do that. That's just how we vote. And they're like, but what has voting 50 years in the city of Baltimore done for the black community?
Chicago.
Nothing. Chicago, nothing. Detroit, nothing. St. Louis, nothing. Right? Nothing. It's done nothing for us. You know what? I'm tired of it. Maybe we should not just be voting just because we're a certain skin color for the certain party. And what happens? They get ostracized. They're now dangerous. Don't listen to them.
Yeah. See, but the interesting thing, and hopefully I'm not jumping the gun on you, but the interesting thing is this is different than any other path to communism I've ever seen.
Mm.
These communists have a partner now,
Okay.
the Green-Red Alliance.
Mm.
If you look at the communists are partnering with what you mentioned earlier, the conservative is people of Islam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now they're working together. We've never seen anything like that before in history. This is the first time. Both of them have kind of different outcomes that they want, but they have the same enemy. Yeah, which is capitalism.
Yeah. Islam's only doing
Christianity
for so long until they get into a specific.
Right. Mm-hmm. I understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, my enemy is your enemy is my enemy, right?
Because they don't believe in this socialism at all.
No. And then you got the woke left who doesn't realize, if I go to that country over there, they're going to throw me out of a building because I'm gay. It is insane. It is insane, the thought process there. But yeah, you're right, Jim. That is 100% that the alliances that are being made. I mean, even when you look at Russia and China, like they're opposed to each other. They want each other's countries to be the greatest power, but they see America standing in their way. And you know what? I will align with you for now so that we can accomplish destroying that country. And I can then step in because I feel like we're greater than you anyways. But you know what? I'm not going to tell you that. And then, like you said, the red and green, and I will add in black in there, that's just what that country is. They want the power too. They're all power hungry totalitarian states.
Yes.
That's what they are. And again, that's how they know that they can't come hard totalitarianist in America. They have to operate from within in a soft way. And that is the whole point behind this book. Go ahead, Josh.
But by any means necessary. That's the crux of everything. That's why you're seeing these weird alliances and stuff, because it comes down to by themselves, they're not powerful enough. So by any means necessary, they'll band together for now, and then they'll fight it out later.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll fight it out later too.
Yeah, they will. We've got other things that starts to happen. Property rights weaken. We've seen that in New York City with the people that own the apartments and that are renting out their apartments. They've now lost their rights to do what they want to do with their prices. Scarcity increases. Citizens become dependent on the state. So communism is socialism with the mask off. That's really what that is. You got socialism could be probably considered somewhat of a soft totalitarianism, but communism is just, that's what it is. It's like, we're going to take the mask off now. This is where we're going. Both are motivated by totalitarianism. And if you don't know what that is, it's a form of government that seeks to control over every aspect of life. It's not just an economic thing. And don't be swayed and think Marxism is just economic either. It is not. But totalitarianism wants to rule politics, your speech, your religion, your education, the media, the economy, and even what people are allowed to think and believe. And, Trump right now, he's being accused of being authoritarian, which blows my mind. But that's what and that just goes to show you people don't know what it means to be an authoritarian. They have no clue. You want to go out and demonstrate no kings and do these protests. Well, if you lived in an authoritarian or totalitarian state, you wouldn't be able to do that. What did they do in Iran when they did that? They killed 40,000 people. Yeah. Okay, point blank range, shot them, killed them, put them in jail, hung them in a public square. That's what would have happened if you actually lived in an authoritarian state. So democratic socialism, though, that sounds awesome. Well, it's just socialism with better branding. And ultimately, and I know you agree with this, Jim and Josh, it's full of communists.
Oh, yeah.
Full of communists. I think there's some socialists in there that don't really understand or realize it, or maybe they're just naive. And they believe in this as an actual better way. Like, that's truly their heart. Okay. But they don't want to believe that there's actually totalitarian intent in this move. Somebody's going to be the higher power. All right. So a couple of things. Here's some receipts. The Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation describes this mission as remembering more than 100 million people killed by communist regimes. You can look all these things up. There's a thing called the Black Book of Communism. It estimated the death toll from communist governments at over 94 million, though some scholars may dispute that. But even if even if it's not the exact number, it's still a catastrophic number. All right, let's talk about our dude, Aleksandr. So, reflecting on Russia's disaster, he said that the explanation he heard was, as a child, men have forgotten God. That's why all this has happened. And that is the crux of this episode here, is men have forgotten God. And therefore, when you forget God, you are no longer held accountable to a higher authority. You are your own authority, which means your sinful nature and your heart is going to relish in that idea of, I can do what I want and I can control my life and anybody else's if I want to. I just have to go about it in a certain way. So Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn, Russian novelist, historian, and Soviet dissident, and that was the book was called "Live Not by Lies," a manual on how to be a Christian dissident or a dissident for Christians or something like that. It's a really great book. He was one of the greatest witnesses against communism. He was a Nobel Prize winner. After spending years in the Soviet prison camp system, or otherwise known as the Gulag, he devoted his life to exposing the reality of communist totalitarianism. He understood that communist governments do not survive by force alone. They survive because ordinary people eventually cooperate with the lies. That's why he wrote Live Not by Lies in 1974. That was also the day he was arrested, February 12th, by the Soviet government and exiled from Russia. He released a short 4-page essay titled "Live Not by Lies" after that. It was his final message to the Soviet people before his exile. His central argument: tyranny depends on lies. Lies only survive when ordinary people repeat them, defend them, or pretend they are true. The first act of resistance is refusing to participate in falsehood. In one of the things that he did in this book, Roger talks about, is it was in Czechoslovakia, another guy, a priest or somebody like that, I can't remember his name. He saw this coming down the pipeline. He saw what was happening in Russia. He knew they were coming to Czechoslovakia soon. What did he do? He poured into the youth and teaching them the Bible so that they knew the truth and so that they wouldn't be deceived by the lies. Hear what I'm saying, right? We have forgotten God. And because we've forgotten God, we don't know the truth. And so we will fall for any lie that's told to us if it's repeated, just like Hitler said, repeated enough times. And if you're caught early enough in age, you're so moldable. You're going to be, this is the expert. This is my teacher. This is the person, the adult in my life that I should listen to. They wouldn't steer me the wrong way. Of course, I'm going to listen. And so Aleksandr had this idea, this pamphlet, Live Not by Lies, and it translated to this person in Czechoslovakia that Rod Dreher writes about to say, I know what's about to happen. They're about to indoctrinate our young people. I need to teach them, don't listen to the lies because you now know the truth. He says one of the most powerful ideas he ever said was, let the lie come into the world, let it even triumph, but not through me. Every authoritarian movement eventually demands conformity. It asks people to say what they know is false, like a boy can be a girl, right? I mean, Okay. It pressures people to remain silent when truth becomes costly. Alexander argued that freedom begins with one simple decision. Number one, tell the truth. Number two, refuse to repeat the lies. And number three, do not participate in deception, even if it costs you. And I think that this is one of the biggest things that you got cancel culture right now, right? I just wrote an article about how, or is actually going to be coming out, I think next Tuesday, about how we think about how we're so persecuted here in America as Christians when there's millions, thousands of people around the world that are being martyred for their faith in God, right? And so not to say the suffering or the persecution isn't real, but let's put it in perspective, number one. And number two, why we see people all the time, Christians all the time, that repeat other lies. I constantly am on Facebook and I have friends of mine that I love, and they usually are trying to say something well, but they get so caught up in their emotions, they start to repeat a lie or something that never actually happened, or a truth that was said, or a statement that was taken out of context, but they present it a certain way. And I have to say, it's like, no, you have to watch the whole video, read the whole article. Make sure you're getting the whole context, because though I agree with you on these things being wrong, that right there is a lie, and you don't need to repeat that,
Right.
He wrote the Gulag Archipelago. It's his most famous work, and it was published in 1973 before he wrote Live Not by Lies. It exposed the brutality of the Soviet forced labor camp system. The book was based on his own imprisonment and testimony from more than 200 survivors of the gulags. It shattered much of the Western world's romanticized view of Soviet communism. Its publication led directly to his arrest and eventual exile from the Soviet Union. That's the kind of stuff young people need to read. They need to be taught history, right, Jim? They need to be taught history, not an agenda history. It's let's see, Modern Connection in 2020. This is where Rod Dreher wrote Live Not by Lies, a manual for Christian dissidents. Dreher intentionally borrowed the title from Alexander's essay. The book includes interviews with survivors of communism and argues that Christians should learn from those who resisted totalitarian regimes. 2025, the book was adapted into a documentary series, which, by the way, you can watch on Angel Studios. It is awesome. And so it brings these stories actually to the big screen. So while all this is happening, right, we need to ask these questions. What does it look like to live not by lies today? And I think these are questions that maybe we don't answer now, but just for the audience, you're being bombarded by all sorts of information. And if you're not a Christian, I pray that you come to know the Lord, because the Holy Spirit's the only one that can help you discern the actual truth from lies. Because if you don't know Jesus, then you don't have the truth in you, so you're not going to be able to recognize it, and you will be deceived, I promise you. But you need to say yes to Jesus, not just so you can know the truth, but because there's so many great things for it, but mainly because you're a sinner. And there is a place for us whenever we die. And if we don't know Jesus, we're all going to go to hell, because that's what we all deserve. We all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. I said that beginning the show tonight, Romans 3:23. But with that benefit of saying yes to Jesus and accepting that glorious gift that he's given us out of his own death and resurrection, he sacrificed himself on the cross, shed his blood for us, broke his body for us, right? He gives us the truth, and it doesn't ever change, and it's consistent, and it makes sense. That's why I do this podcast. It just makes the most sense. And it's not all about your brain, your intellectual insight, okay? The Holy Spirit gives you all of that. But we are being deceived every single day. I have not seen this level of gaslighting ever in my life. Point blank right in front of us, okay? Another question, are there cultural, political, or social pressures that encourage people to deny what they believe to be true? The answer is yes, absolutely yes. And for you young people, again, how do you identify lies if you don't know the truth? It's just that simple. If I was born and lived in a world of darkness all my life, that's all I ever knew or experienced, and I never saw ever light, I would not even know that word existed as in my vocabulary. It wouldn't. I would just know that this would be, and then all of a sudden when the light got turned on and I could see everything, oh my goodness, how things would be so different, right? Another question, how should Christians respond when telling the truth carries a personal cost? And it all carries a cost. It all carries a cost. And if you know what, if you don't have to pay any cost for it, then maybe it's not worth telling. Maybe it's not worth embracing. If it just makes everybody happy. I always tell people, if you're a Christian and nobody's ever pushed back on that, then you've not ever told anybody you're a Christian, or you've not told enough people. Maybe you told somebody that, yeah, I'm a Christian too, right? You've definitely not told enough people if you've never gotten pushback on that right there. There's some verses that I love. John 8:31-32. You will know the truth, and the truth will what? Set you free. And that's what Alexander is wanting people to understand and know. Ephesians 4:25. Therefore, laying aside falsehood, speaking truth, each one of you with his neighbor. Proverbs 12:22. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord. 2 Timothy 1:7-8. God has not given us a spirit of fear. Do not be ashamed of the testimony of our Lord. That's just that's a combining of it, right? God has not given us a spirit of fear. Meaning we can have confidence in God and his truth. We don't have to be afraid of anybody else. We need to fear the Lord, but nobody else. And the confidence we get, and this is, this whole right here, this whole hat, the reason why I got this hat, Make Bible Study Great Again, is because when you study the Bible, not just read it, right? I mean, Jim, it'd be interesting to hear, like, you've been listening to Josh and Sterling, you listen to their morning prayer, right? And they're bringing the word of God and they're praying about it. And when they're doing this, right, it's like brings confidence. When I watch Live Free, I'm inspired to want to dig deeper into God's word because I'm so amazed by what I just learned. And then I'm like, man, God is so real. His word is so truthful. I want to tell somebody else now. I don't want to hold on to that.
Well, and the cool thing about them is that stuff is hard. The Bible is difficult to digest in certain spots, right? Because of the way it's written. It's not how we talk today, right? So and so if they don't think they understand something, they go get the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's you walk away with the understanding, but those guys do the work as well as other folks in the chat like Bo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That bring the whole thing. So it kind of wraps it around it. Like when I study it, I walk away having to go back and read it like 2 or 3 other, some of it like 2 or 3 more times or even more.
Yeah, today was something.
But I'm I'm kind of fighting through it, and I see them doing the same thing. So so it's. I never knew that, man. I'd read it once in a while and just kind of, well, I don't get it. So,
right. Yeah. It's just, and this is something I've just sort of really dug into in the last 5 years of my Christian walk. And I've been a Christian for 31 years. It just blows my mind. Some of the things I'm learning in little things like, I love to, that's an odd detail. I'm going to pull on that thread. And it unravels things that just like, oh my gosh, that's connected to this and over here. And then that was in the New Testament. That's also an Old Testament. I mean, I did a little short on
7,337 times, but to be exact.
What's that?
67,337 times in the Bible. Yeah. Or 63,000. Yeah. I got the number here.
The connections. I got what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. Some people say it's over 100,000. There's other people that say it's even more than that, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I got the infographic right here. There you go.
Yeah,
6,779. Yeah, I knew I was close.
Yeah. Isn't that beautiful? That's amazing, right? I just did a little an article on John the Baptist's outfit, like just his outfit. Like I started to notice a trend. I was like, wait, it talks about what he looks like before it tells us who he is. It says this guy wearing this leather belt and this like sort of like this fur cloak, right? And there was somebody else that did that, Elijah. And then it's talked about in Zechariah where They say, hey, the prophets are lying to you. They'll no longer be able to wear this uniform anymore. It's almost like it was the uniform of a prophet wearing a leather belt and this fur cloak, right? And then it's talked about in Malachi. And it's just, and Jesus talks about it, and it's just like, that is cool, and guess who is the Elijah prophet to come? Malachi says John the Baptist. And then it opens up in Mark and we see John the Baptist wearing the same outfit that Elijah was wearing, the one guy that he's supposed to be like, right? He's coming as the forerunner of Jesus. And it's just like stuff like that, man. It just blows my mind. And I want people to know that kind of stuff, but it brings a kind of confidence, going back to what I was saying. It just brings this confidence to where I don't feel shame anymore. And I don't care if somebody gets upset with me. Like, I want to be as nice as I can when I say it, but you know what? I also expect somebody's going to be upset by what I say just because it's God.
It's the world's response.
That's just how Jesus even tells us, right? So just to finish this out, I got a couple quotes I want to share and a couple other people. But one more, Acts 5, we already sort of read a similar verse, but we must obey God rather than men. Communism doesn't begin with prison camps or gulags, right? Begins with ideas, and then it goes to propaganda, and then be thinking about the process of our own country, right? What we're seeing. Then it's normalized as lies. Okay. Alexander, his warning wasn't just about the Soviet Union. He's caring about all societies, right? It was about any society that wants to slowly trade these truths for convenience and this ideology or for fear. And his echo still exists today. Live not by lies. Something to remember, totalitarianism doesn't require communism. But history has never produced a communist nation that didn't become authoritarian or totalitarianism. It just hasn't. All right, some quotes real quick. Just something for you guys to if something clicks with you. I always love quotes because quotes sometimes just stick with me, right? We already went over Alexander's men have forgotten God. It's just worth repeating again. That's why all of this has happened. People didn't just stop going to church. They rejected God as the highest authority. Once God was removed, something else took his place. State became God, ideology became religion, and political leaders became the priests, the moral authorities in that church. Whittaker Chambers, that's who I was trying to remember earlier, American journalist, author, and former Soviet spy. He says, man without mysticism is a monster. Now, he's not talking about like the magic arts, okay? If people believe they are only matter, like physical matter, they begin to act like nothing else ultimately has meaning. If there's no God, then there's no higher moral authority. If man becomes the highest authority, history shows he often becomes his own God. And when people lose a sense of the sacred, they can justify almost anything in the name of progress, power, or ideology. I look at Rome and Caesar, that guy was considered a god. I look at the Egyptian pharaoh, considered a god, right? Various other religions with their top leaders considered a god. I look at the Pope of the Catholic Church, to some people considered a god. Okay, they may not want to say it, but he can do no wrong, according to some Catholics. All right, one of my favorite guys, Thomas Sowell, American economist, social theorist, and political philosopher. He says socialism in general has a record of failure so blatant that only an intellectual could ignore or evade it. That's, I love that. Socialism has been tried in so many places, and those experiments have often produced only economic hardship, shortages, reduced freedoms, or authoritarian governments. And given that history, Sowell argues it's difficult to keep claiming socialism works without dismissing or explaining away those outcomes. You have to really be really smart to avoid that, okay? Right. So I don't want to try to give Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren any more credit for being smart, because I don't really think they are, but
they aren't.
Yes,
they aren't.
No, sorry. I agree. And then lastly, we got Milton Friedman. He's an American economist. He says the society that puts equality, this is what sums up this episode, guys. The society that puts equality before freedom will end up with neither. The society that puts freedom before equality will end up with a great measure of both. Let me say that again. I love this. And it's so true. The society that puts equality before freedom will end up with neither. The society that puts freedom before equality will end up with a great measure of both. And I see formerly in our country raised up in a Christian nation, right? These Christian principles our country has grown up in. When we freedom was the main thing, it led to equality. It led to women's suffrage. It led to freedom of slaves. It led to civil rights acts. It led to, one party more than any other party that espoused a lot of this faith in God to put forth policy that brought more equality because their goal was more freedom. But now we look at, no, we need more equality now. So we need to change our policies and our laws, which are now reducing our freedoms. Look at Canada. Canada just passed this hate speech law. And you know what? It leaves the door wide open. I'm just waiting any moment for a pastor or a Christian to be put in jail because they spoke a Leviticus 18 or any other passage of the Bible that says that's sin and, you don't need to do that. That's hate speech. You're going to jail for it. It's just wide open for that.
It'll happen.
It will. So based on that statement, freedom allows people to make different choices, and different choices lead to different outcomes. That's where equity cannot happen. I mean, in some ways, I get equity is important in certain understandings and contexts, but when it comes to a nation and trying to make everybody end up at the same place, it can never happen with a free country. You can't do it. You have to change and regulate certain things in order for everybody. You have to take from this person to give to that person to supposedly them end up in the same place. But what you end up really is a very huge gap, no middle class, a very poor lower class, and a very high elite class. So it's never going to end up that way. If government tries to make everyone's outcome equal, it must control more and more of people's lives. The more control government has, the less freedom people have. When freedom disappears, guess what goes? Innovation, hard work, personal responsibility. And ironically, governments that promise equality often end up creating a new ruling class while everyone else has less freedom. Friedman wasn't against equal human dignity or equal rights. He was warning against government trying to guarantee equal outcomes. And every one of our progressive far left and even some of the, central left are saying things like, you know what, we all have to have equal outcomes. That's just not accurate. Can't do it. Basically, Friedman's saying a free society tends to create opportunity and a controlled society tends to lose both freedom and prosperity. Yeah. That's all I got, guys. What we're going to talk about in the next one is we're going to talk about how a small minority changes an entire nation. And we're going to name drop a little bit. We're going to talk about the DSA and their strategy. We're going to talk about old Bernie, AOC, and the normalization of Democrat socialism. We're going to mention our dude Zoran. Every time I think of Zoran, I think of the movie with Adam Sandler. You know what I'm talking about? Wasn't it Zoran? It was Zoran, wasn't it? Zoran? I'm pretty sure it was Zoran.
Something like that, if it isn't that.
And it's Ben Stiller, but yeah, you're close.
Ben Stiller, that's what it was, Ben Stiller.
Yeah.
So Mr. Mamdani, and then we have to, this is almost categorical, James Tallarico and this religious left that is growing and really, really pulling a lot of Christians to their side. It's very dangerous. And then that will be all of episode 3, and then we'll get into episode 4. So, hey, what do you guys have to add? Anything that you want to add? Close out with?
Yeah, I got one. So you talk about the freedom a lot, right? So, and I was thinking while you were talking about it, is like, well, what these socialists don't understand is that freedom isn't free. Now we've definitely heard that statement across the board with our friends, but here's the thing: we understand that freedom comes with sacrifice. I wonder where we got that idea from. It's almost like we read it in a series of books somewhere, 66 of them to be exact.
Yeah.
And so we like the understanding. That's what a Christian's understanding of that worldview is. Just like you talk about on the show, we're free as Christians because Jesus was sacrificed, the propitiation, right? The great, and what a propitiation, right? And so we understood that with that. So it's like, okay, why don't we apply that to life? Why don't? Because we understand that this works. This is and so if this works here, it's got to work everywhere else, and it does. And that's why this experiment has worked so well in America, is because we understood that in order to be free, it takes sacrifice.
Yeah.
You take away the sacrifice, and you end up becoming the sacrifice.
Yeah.
For all of time.
Yeah. I just kind of have one thing. When you take a look at our Constitution doesn't force us to go one way or another with an economic system.
Yeah.
So we could be capitalists, we could even be socialists, but our Constitution does not allow communism.
Yeah.
Because it takes away the rights that we naturally have from God. So that's why you see the DSA saying if they get into office, the first thing they're going to do is rip up the Constitution and write a new one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of my takeaway.
Yeah. And we also have to understand, like, really what freedom is. The idea of free to do whatever you want is not freedom.
No.
Freedom, it comes with restraint. And that's why they say, you know, we can't be a free people without the Christian principles, which are a guide, right, on what freedom is. Freedom is the ability to say no. It's the ability to do right and to do wrong without compulsion, right? We are able to we want to see everybody else flourish and not just ourselves. And it's rooted in this idea of love for neighbor, love for God, and just in those two things, right, sums up the law entirely. That when we seek out, love God first with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, right, and love your neighbor as yourself. When we do those two things, we become the most freest people in the world, and we become the greatest society and culture to ever live. And we were like that for once. Now, not perfect. Not saying there's no such thing as a utopia. We will never see it until the Lord Jesus comes, and then we will have kingdom, a new heaven and a new earth, right?
Yes.
We cannot create that utopia. We will never be able to create it. If man has anything to do with it, it's always going to be a dystopia, and we're never going to have it perfect. So, but while we're here, God, He gives us principles. He gives us guardrails. He gives us guidelines. He gives us things to help us out. And so it's, after hopefully we walk through this, anybody watching, listening, or watches this later on, hopefully by the time you've gotten to these end of these 3 hours and past my glitch and being kicked off and coming back on and all that stuff, the one thing I want you to take away is eyes open, get your head out of the sand. Stop saying, I don't want to deal with politics or look at politics because it does nothing but anger me. I understand stepping away. I understand getting off of social media, taking a break. I get that. But if you do it for too long and you don't know what's going on out there, and next thing you know, things are in your backyard that you did not expect you'd ever see, and you're shocked by that, just know it's been decades coming. It's not just like all of a sudden it just happened. And you've missed it because you've chosen to take yourself out of the sphere of the state. We have those three spheres for a reason: the family, the church, and the state. Collectively, they each have their own roles and responsibilities, and they're all accountable to God, not to each other, right? But we have to pay attention in each one of those spheres as individuals. We can't just say, oh, I'm just going to focus on family and church and not focus on what the state's doing. Because guess what? The state will do what it wants to do if the Christians remove itself from that sphere. So I appreciate you guys. Jim, man, you know what? Can you come on for the last 2 episodes?
Sure. I'd love to. Thank you.
Man.
This is great.
Love to have you, brother. Thank you for coming on, man. And we'll talk more off air about what that may look like with my upcoming schedule in the next week and a half.
No worries. No worries.
Josh, man, close us out, and then I'll say my last bit, and we'll be done.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll say as always, I always tell everybody, stay in trouble. And I'll get to that in just a second. Why I tell you to stay in trouble, because I want to remind you guys that Monday morning Monday through Saturday morning, actually, 9 a.m. Eastern, right here on Revolver Broadcasting. Morning Word. This is a show that these guys have been talking about for, but Morning Word is a Bible study that, Sterling and I started a couple years back, and, we're looking to make it gangbusters, but once it gets there, I'm telling you, we're just two dudes doing Bible study. And so if you want to come somewhere and you want to do Bible study together and you're like, well, like Jim said, I don't really know what I'm looking at. Well, let's do it together. Let's get in there and do it together. And we're doing something that's called expository, which we're doing it verse by verse, chapter by chapter. We're getting full context, historical context, theological context, cultural context, everything that encompasses with every bit of scripture we're reading. So if we're reading something, we want to come to a full understanding of what we're reading and not just a verse here or there, because I know that can confuse some folks, and I know it confuses me from time to time. So I like to be able to pull full context before content for sure. Also, Friday night, Faith, Family, and Politics, 7 p.m. Eastern, continuing in the book of James. Would love to have you guys here for that. Let's see here. What else do we got going on? Oh, and Saturday night, I will be over on Pilled. And I'll get you guys more information about that tomorrow morning. But I'm going to be doing a game show with so the young lady. There's Coffee Talks. It's this little game show. It's kind of like Hollywood Squares, but it's with streamers. So she grabs all these different people, and apparently I got thrown into the mix by our good friend Dana Christensen over there at God Signpost, and he's like, yeah, you need to have this guy on, and so
that sounds like fun.
Get thrown into a game show. Yeah, be careful. I'll send you next. But yeah, it looks like it's gonna be a lot of fun. And so just keep the notification bells turned on. Always keep coming back to see what else we got here at Revolver Broadcasting. But why do I tell you to stay in trouble? Because if you have Christ in your hearts, you will in fact be in trouble with the world. The world doesn't want you living under His grace. That's your salvation first and foremost. And I pray that each and every one of you has that. The world doesn't want you reading His word, praying to Him, or even having a relationship with Him. And it definitely doesn't want you going out and doing something so dangerous as telling others about Him. As a matter of fact, they might even want to take you out, as we saw with our good friend Charlie. But I still want to be encouragement to you and say, let's do all that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in trouble. Follow Jesus.
Amen. Hey, you guys, I've got a couple of things in the works too. So if you don't know, we have another podcast, and I'm working on a ministry called Table 42 Ministries. And my buddy Zach Lahan and my son, who is taking a hiatus right now because he's got he's a coach, and so football season is about to start up. But we have recorded a few episodes. We're probably about 7 in right now, and right now we are doing the shadows of Jesus in the Old Testament. We've already done Genesis, we've done Exodus. Now we're going to jump into some Judges and Joshua and Judges. So we are doing that over there at Table 42. You can find that on YouTube right now. And it's just we are wanting to just go through the cool things. And like I said earlier, we are studying the Bible. We find these little threads, we pull on them, and we want to teach you guys what we're learning, and hopefully we'll learn from you guys too. It's Acts 2:42 is what we base it on, where the disciples learned under the teaching of the apostles. They fellowship, broke bread, and they prayed together. And then we saw the numbers of the church grow tremendously just in the next couple verses. So it's something that we are doing over there at Table 42, where we're just wanting to create a table community, and we're inviting you to that table as well. So you are more than welcome to join us there. We don't do anything live right now. It's all pre-recorded. So sometimes we're a couple weeks behind on the cool news stuff. So we talk a little bit about some stuff at the beginning. But join us over there, me, Zach Lahan, and then my son will be back on. He's also a Daniel as well. But guys, for this right now, look, as Christians, we are not called to panic or retreat, guys. Just like Josh said, we are called to know the truth, live the truth, and point people to Jesus Christ. Okay. So I appreciate you joining us for this episode of IMSP Live. And this is episode 2. It's 2 of 4. So join us for number 3 and number 4. We're going to have Jim back on. And hey, guys, if something doesn't make sense in this world, check out the Christian worldview. Check out Jesus. Get into your word. Say yes to Him, because I promise you the Christian worldview makes the most sense out of life in the universe. God bless. We'll see you next time.
Yep. And for you Rumblers, I'm going to get you guys rated out to our good friend over there at Res Truth Pod. And for everybody else, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, right here on Revolver Broadcasting for Morning Word. Love you. Bye.